All right. Good morning, everybody. It's the Rise and Grind Morning Show. We're going to be kicking it off today. Big-time landing spots here for some free agents. Couple of names that the Detroit Lions are definitely going to be interested in. We're going to talk about those. And Mad Max, he's had enough of the rumors. And is it just rumors? Well, we're going to hear from Mad Max today. We've got some audio. We have a couple of things to share with that. With the Lions' top free agents, we've also compiled a list here of the top free agents on the board, the big board. Most importantly, how are the Lions going to build their roster now with Drew Petzing? And what did one of the executives from the NFL have to say about how the Seattle Seahawks built their roster? Does it validate everything that I talk about on this channel? Or do I got it completely wrong? We're going to find out here in just a few moments. All right, we're back, man. It's Friday, and we got some news. Drew Petzing jumped on the mic last night with Jeremy Reisman, Pride of Detroit. It was a good interview. And Eric, I know, so I'm just going to kick this off with a question to you right away, because I know that you've been waiting to hear from Drew Petzing. Now, before you give me your answer, I showed multiple interviews, post-game press conferences of Drew Petzing. And I have to say, what he said yesterday is no different than anything else he's ever said. How did it change your mind? Or did it change your mind?
Well, I'm starting to warm up to the guy. I still have to see what he puts on the field. I still have to see how he interacts with players and how he treats this David Montgomery situation, how he formulates a plan and makes it work with Jared Goff. Jared Goff, in my mind, is a top 2 or 3 quarterback in the NFC. So
NFC or NFL?
In the NFL. And let's see what this guy can do. And I can't really judge him until I see at least a small sample size of what the guy can do. But I'm starting to warm up to this guy.
I got you. I
really liked his interview that they first released through the Lions Loyal members. I watched that video, and then a couple hours later, I watched the video of you breaking down Jeremy Reisman's video with Drew Petzing. And it was nice to see that they're not just waiting until the combine to have his first press conference. They're kind of warming him up, letting him be on a podcast first. So it's kind of a different way of bringing him to the masses than just having it's kind of different because he's not doing a press conference with 13 or 14 beat writers. He's just doing it with 2 beat writers on a podcast. I kind of like the intimate, got to ask him a lot of questions, and he got to go into detail. And they were even asking him stuff about scheme and stuff that he really can't talk about yet. because he doesn't want to let the whole league know exactly what he's going to do. But most of the league should know what he's going to do, because the Lions, I don't think they're going to overhaul this offense and make it completely something different. They're going to work within what they are. And he even said he is going to make an offense that works with the players that he has.
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest key, and that goes back to the identity that Dan Campbell said he wanted to get back to, right? I mean, he's mentioned multiple times that this is about getting back to what they do well and getting back to the identity of 22, 23, where there's very specific years that he stated. And I think when you incorporate that to what Drew Petzing is able to do, or what he's able to bring to the table, it's a force multiplier, in my opinion. You know, when I use that term, a lot of scouts will use that term when you discuss or evaluate a player's ability, not just on field, but the ability to transition or make your roster better. Or elevate the offense, or elevate the defense. What can they bring to the table, right? How can they multiply what is already going good and make it better? And I think that's what Drew Petzing is all about. And I think a lot of us, including myself, maybe looked at Drew Petzing and tried to put him into a box a little bit. I was okay with it. Like, I was okay. Like, if we were into a box of 13 personnel, I thought that was totally fine. That if we were going to run that more often than not, I think that it's one of the most unique personnel groupings that if you have the right personnel to run it, which you have to have, then it can really do some dynamic things on the football field. And I think I spoke to that just the other day when I talked about my new play that I call the torch. It's a very specific play, but I think every team kind of runs something similar to it, just not very often, because they have to have the personnel to make it work. To your point about, blending, using, how's he going to use David Montgomery? Well, he kind of deflected that, which rightfully so. He deflected that. He punted that to Dan Campbell and David Montgomery. And again, I'm not going to try to read between the lines here, or between the trees, whatever you want to call it. It's not his decision, right? Of course, he's going to go to Dan and say, I would love to have this player. I would love to keep David. Or he could say, you know what? Like he said, there's other guys behind him that could be as good or better. And he kind of said something similar to that. Don't lock me in on a quote, but he said something similar to that there could be some guys behind him that are as good or better, right? And where he said, no, what did he say? He said multiple running backs. You'll have to go back and watch the video, but he said something to the degree that there were more running backs on this roster than I think what meets the eye. Jacob Saylor's being one of them. So when it comes to David Montgomery, that's Dan and Brad. That's not Drew. Drew just has to work with what he's given. And I think one of the big misnomers about Drew, misconceptions, I should say. And I don't know why this was just like, an epiphany yesterday. I've heard it on Woodward. I've heard it on other channels. They're like, he had to deal with all these injuries and now we love the guy because, we get it. He had to deal with all these injuries. Or what was the analogy I heard? Well, look at what Miami did. Tua did, they lost A-Chain. And how do you compare A-Chain to what they did in Arizona? It's like, are you kidding me here? Like, it's not even close. Or they lost Tyreek Hill. I'm sorry. Comparing that to what happened in Arizona. You lost one guy. You didn't lose five, right? You didn't lose five of your top six. And that is what Drew had to deal with. And again, I don't know why, again, this was such an epiphany yesterday that the Cardinals were dealing with all these injuries, and so Drew had to do whatever he could do. Drew had to draw it up the way that he was available or able to with the players that were available to him. And that is what I believe, creates the identity of your coach. Who are they? Can they roll with the punches? Can they think on their feet? Can they, adapt and overcome? Because in game, you're going to have to do that. You have to have a plan for that. The one question that I would have asked, and I wish the better questions were asked to these guys. No shade at Jeremy Reisman. I think they did just fine with the limited time that they had. Is how are you preparing during the week when it comes to injuries? And what I mean by that is this. Drew, do you have a plan every week that says, I just lost David Montgomery in the first quarter. I just lost Jamison Williams now in the second quarter. I just lost Sam Laporta in the third quarter. Do you have a plan for those situations? How you're going to navigate your scheme? How does that work for you? Or is it all on the fly? And that is the one thing that I've always wondered. Do they have some sort of a plan that if they lose X, they do Y? And I get it. I'm probably thinking way too deep here. I over prepare. And you probably don't want to do that. But they probably have there's no probably, they do. They have the scheme to run, or they have the plays to run, or the formations to run if that player's not in the game anyway. So that's probably what they go to. But the question is that your go-to? Is that what you really want to be in? Do you have to change what your entire identity has been the entire game now that you're missing those players? How do you adapt and overcome? So that is one big question. The other thing that I took out of this, yesterday from Drew was, hold on here. I just had it on the tip of my tongue and I just lost it. I love that. I'll come back to it.
That's fun.
Yeah, I hate that. So I was reading something and I just lost it. So at the end of the day, look, Drew's interview yesterday was no different than, to me, the press conferences that I've already watched. I guess where I was speaking in terms of this epiphany of losing players, and like I don't understand how media personalities were not doing research before they ever spoke one word about the guy. Had you noticed, that's what I did right away. If I don't know much about somebody, what I think that we saw in Detroit, and this is hilarious to me, is, and it happens with players too, is that the first knee-jerk reaction is, I didn't get my guy, right? I didn't get the guy that I didn't get Mike McDaniel. So Drew, I don't like you. Oh, Drew is a failure. Oh, Drew, look what Arizona sucked, right? And instead, now 2 weeks later, postpartum of fallout, it's, wait a second, he had all these injuries? And they were still leading in several metrics. Their run game was one of the best almost every year since 2023. McBride went crazy 2 years in a row. McBride was the only receiver on the field other than Harrison Jr. And Harrison Jr. was beat up all year. And then he was gone after, I think, week 14. Dortch was gone since, I think, week 12. Connor was gone after week 3. And he was still able to pull up 1,200 yards last year. That's insane. That's more than just the player being great. That has a lot to do with the coordinator and how they are able to facilitate a game plan and put the stress on the defense, even though you are down everybody. And then you turn Michael Carter into some animal. So I look, there is way more to Drew than what meets the eye. We know probably 5% of what this dude's about, so I appreciate it, from your standpoint, Eric, that you still want to see it on the field. I do too. All of us do. All of us want to see it on the field. I'm not going to wait that long to already understand and know. I can tell by the way he answers things, by watching some of the film, that the guy knows what he's doing. And I think that this is going to be one of the best hires that Dan Campbell has ever had. And I'll put my fork in the ground right now on that statement. So anything else you want to add to Drew? And then I might as well play the Lions loyal member video for everybody so they can see it.
Yeah, my thing is this. We've been, as Lions fans, burned twice now. We had one offensive coordinator who had his thoughts in the clouds during one of the most important games in Lions history. And instead of focusing on the game, he was focused on his new team. And then the following year, we hire a new offensive coordinator, And me being a Dan Campbell lackey, I bought in right away to Johnny Morton. I thought, okay, perfect. This guy was with us before. I love everything about this guy. This guy's going to be awesome. We're going to win the Super Bowl with Johnny Morton. And then 6 weeks into his tenure, Dan Campbell pulls the play calling away. Even though we were 4-2 at the time, he still pulled it away after we were on a 4-game win streak and lost one game. Something was going on internally. Something was not right. He was not a fit with the players. I think he was oil and water with Jared Goff and some of the other major players on this offense. So even when outwardly it looked all peaches and cream, sunshine and rainbows, it was not behind closed doors. So that's why I'm taking more of a guarded approach with Drew Petzing. It's not anything against Drew Petzing. I've been burned twice now in 2 years on offensive coordinators that you think everything is great and it's not. So until I can see at least some of what he's putting on the field, I just want to take a wait and see approach. But I do like the direction that I'm seeing he is going with this team. And I believe that's part of the reason, probably the main reason he was hired here in Detroit, is because of what he did with how little he had.
Yeah, I think that you're spot on there. And look, I get it, man. You're protecting you protected your feelings here. I understand that. And when you speak about, the one with his, heads in the clouds, that would have been Ben Johnson. Clearly was more worried about Chicago than he was finishing out the season. And, I'll put the tinfoil hat on for 30 seconds and I'll say that there's something within me that still believes he didn't want to win a Super Bowl in Detroit because he felt that he could go win one in Chicago. And how crazy of a story that would have been for him, that he just one-upped his teacher. And Ben was an internal hire from Patricia, or he was a hire from Patricia. I mean, he started as a tight ends coach well before, Dan Campbell was in town. So Dan didn't directly hire him, but he did coach him up. He did teach him a lot. He did keep him around, and he did promote him to offensive coordinator. So I know that people want to say, well, Dan failed at, Johnny Moe, and Dan failed with, Anthony Lynn, but he also created a head coach. And that's the kind of stuff that burns me, that I don't understand, that why the general public, why they can't see that. Why they can't see that he took a tight ends coach, a young guy, one of the younger coaches in the league now, and brought him all the way up to a head coach. That should speak volumes for what Dan Campbell is able to do and how he's able to build his personnel up, right, and elevate his personnel. That Dan is a great teacher. Just because Dan maybe makes a few mistakes throughout the year, like every coach, and Brad makes a few mistakes, like every GM, doesn't mean that these aren't cream of the crop when it comes to coaches and GMs and just good people. A couple of rumors I want to dispel right away, but I got to do that right after I say a big shout out and thank you to Rather Be Fishing this morning, 1 month, part of the membership group here on Rockhound Detroit Lions. So big shout out to you, man. Thank you so much for being part of it. And let's, he
also did a super chat.
Yep, I'll get into that one next. Here we go. Let's give you a Gibby touchdown. At least I think I have that queued up today.
Goff turn, gives it to Jameer, to the end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions.
All right, welcome into 1 month, man. Appreciate it. And then the super chat. So, hold on. Where did it go? How much was it? $5. $5 super chat. He says, great video on Petzing, Will. I'm pumped for this season. It's our season. I'm right there with you, man. I think that the Lions can do some big-time damage this year. I think that Super Bowl it's it. Like, that's where we got to go. And at a minimum, we have to be there, right? At a minimum, we have to be there. And we're going to talk a little bit about roster construction today. And we're going to hear from an NFL executive former NFL GM that is going to talk about roster construction. And at the end of this, we're going to figure out, are the Lions doing it right? And we're going to compare it to what the Seahawks have done. I know a lot of people have said, well, look, the Seahawks went and spent all this money. And in free agency, I think they spent the fourth or fifth most. But what they fail to recognize is over $100 million of that went to Sam Darnold. They really didn't do a whole lot. And when you look at the starting roster, I think that you're going to be surprised. But we'll talk about all that here in just a few moments. Let's dispel a couple of rumors here. Number one, a week or so ago, when we heard about Kafka potentially going to the Raiders, I immediately said, yeah, no, not happening. Whether he's interviewing or not, great. I don't see it happening. And I think we could probably mark ourselves safe from that now, that he's going to stay here in Detroit. And I think he has a really good opportunity. With him and Drew Petzing and Dan Campbell in this offense, I think that what Kafka is going to figure out real quick is that by staying in Detroit at least for one season, now there's not going to be a ton of head coaching jobs next year, maybe a couple. Won't be a lot because they went through 10 this year. There's not going to be a lot of offensive coordinator, defensive coordinator type positions open because they just went through like 17 of them. That he's going to need some time to incubate a little bit. And what a better way to do that than with a team that is probably headed to the Super Bowl this year, right? Or at least a team that's going to make some big waves in the playoffs if they can get this ship, sailing in the right direction. It's a great spot for Kafka to be. He's going to be part of one of the most elite offenses ever to be built in the NFL. It's a good place for him to be. So rumor number one is that pretty sure he's staying. Rumor number two, we talked about this a little bit already, was Hank Fraley. So Eric, I know you wanted to talk about it again today briefly. What is this rumor saying that we're not out of the woods yet with Hank Fraley? Because I haven't heard anything or seen anything that would tell me that he's going anywhere. Hank already said he's staying.
Well, I found a little article, and it says the dust hasn't settled on the 2026 NFL hiring cycle just yet. With the final remaining head coaching opening officially filled with the Las Vegas Raiders hiring Clint Kubiak, Kubiak has to fill out his coaching staff at a very late stage, and to do it compared to his fellow new head coaches. Now, Kubiak was with the Seattle Seahawks, and who was one of the people who interviewed for the Seahawks offensive coordinator job twice last year? Hank Fraley. So this just goes into that Seattle, they're probably leaning towards going towards an internal candidate for their OC job.
Well, so if you are you saying that, or is the article saying that?
This is what the article's saying. That
so I thought the article said that we got to worry about Hank Fraley leaving.
Yeah, to possibly to the Raiders and not the Seahawks, where people were thinking.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Seahawks, or I mean the Raiders, they still have to fill out their offensive coordinator position. That's the last one left, because the Seahawks are most likely going to bring up someone internally.
Mm-hmm.
And they're doing their interviews for that this week.
Well, I would also expect Kubiak is going to want to steal some internal players from Seattle, or internal coaches.
Yep, possible.
So the possibility that you see, Pete's probably wants to stay in Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
And the odds-on favorite, from what I've heard, is Pete's to be elevated to the OC position. Whether that happens or not, we're about to find out here over the next 24 hours, probably. Maybe 48. And then it should be done. But as far as the Raiders go, I would expect that you might see one or two guys follow him over to Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it could be Pete's. Like he's probably one of the biggest names. I think Hank's fine. He isn't going anywhere.
Well,
The things that bother me though, Eric, is this.
Yeah.
When I see things like Lions bracing for Hank Fraley's eventual departure with Dan Skipper's return, who the hell thinks that Dan Skipper is the next offensive line coach for the Lions? Like, are we being serious here?
That's a few seasons off.
Few?
Jesus.
A few seasons. It's probably a never.
Like 10 seasons away.
Right.
Come
Okay.
on.
Or when I see this one, Lions make unexpected coaching decision for 2026, and it's a picture of Dan Campbell. Like, the clickbait is just so stupid.
Well, I wasn't thinking of this one as clickbait. I was thinking of, what if it's a possibility that he actually, that might be a gut punch surprise. What would happen if Hank Fraley left for an OC job for another team? We would have to probably internally hire someone to be the new OC and then replace.
Oh, you're not OC.
I mean, line coach,
Yeah.
O-line coach, and running game coordinator.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the good news. We got Kafka.
Yep.
Okay. Kafka can definitely be the run game coordinator.
Yeah.
Right? Typically that goes to your offensive line coach or defensive line coach, or it's shared between defensive line coach, offensive line coach. Typically. Sometimes your running back coach obviously is involved in that whole room as well. A lot of times you see defensive coordinators get that role because they're on the other side and they can tell you what you're doing wrong or what you're doing right. I'm not concerned. Either way, we have Kafka, but I'm gonna take Hank Fraley's word. When he said, I'll paraphrase, that last year he interviewed. It was fun. Glad he had the experience, but he's good where he is. His family's here. He's got 3 daughters in college. He doesn't see any reason to disrupt that.
Yeah.
So I think we're good on Hank.
Hank's been at this coaching game a long time.
Yeah.
And not just with the Lions. I mean, he worked with Drew Petzing before in Minnesota. So he's been around. He's done his time. So to see him someday move up as an OC, I could see it happening eventually. And it's something that other people can see as well.
All right. Quick thing in the chat. I see. All right. Yeah. User. Mike P. I don't know why YouTube is having problems with that. Sometimes I'll click on a video and there's no video and I hear the audio. I have to shut everything down and then reopen it, and it's usually fine. It's not just here; it's everything I've watched, and it must be a Samsung glitch. But there's also a ton of other issues. Like I can't even respond to comments on my phone anymore, at all.
Really?
It says that. It says that it's like disappeared, like it doesn't exist. It's weird. I don't get it. And there's always been issues with YouTube and Samsung. Maybe it's finally going to force me to go back to Apple. My kids would love that, but
never.
Apple's great. I mean, it has a lot of great features. But all right, enough of the small talk here. So Hank, Hank's not going anywhere.
I don't believe so either. I just wanted to bring up the possibility. What if it happened? Would the Lions be prepared if that was to happen? And you kind of answered that with Kafka.
Yeah. Well, I'm not saying he's going to be the offensive line coach.
No. I'm not saying
But I'm saying that, half of his job is taken care of already. And there's plenty of guys on that coaching roster that could probably take over. And then, no, Dan Skipper is not your next offensive line coach.
No, not yet.
You know?
Got to put in your time, man. You can't just be the boss after 1 week.
Yeah. That's just silly. All right, I'm going to apologize about the audio quality. This could be a little hot to get started. But here is the message from Drew Petzing that went out to Lions loyal members.
What's up, Lions loyal members? Drew Petzing here, your new offensive coordinator. Me and my family are getting settled here in Detroit and just wanted to give you a little bit of background on who I am and what I'm about. Fired up to be here and can't wait to get to work. when I am not coaching, outside of spending time with my family, love to spend time with my wife and 2 kids. I love good food. I love to snowboard. I like to golf when the weather permits that, but pretty active. Like to get outside, like to work out, like to do things, in and around the community. Looking back to where I was in 2009 as a volunteer assistant at Harvard, to tell that person that this was going to happen, that I would have this opportunity, would be a dream. I don't think at any point I thought that this would be the reality, and I can't tell you kind of how excited I am and how lucky you are to be in this position, and don't take it for granted and make the most of it. Yeah, I've been very fortunate in my coaching career to be around some unbelievable coaches, mentors, people that helped grow me, invested in me, both as a coach and as a person. Most recently, Kevin Stefanski and Jonathan Gannon. Worked with both those guys for almost 9 years. Gary Kubiak, Norv Turner, Pat Shurmur, just to name a few, guys that have done it at the highest level as coordinators, play callers, and head coaches. Gave me such a great perspective into the NFL and what it took to be successful. I think one of the things you try to do as a coach is you are constantly learning. You're always trying to find new ways to do things, new ways to communicate, new ways to teach, new ways to attack a defense. But that's a process that's never going to be complete. So I was going to go to dinner with 3 sports figures. Let's keep it in the NFL. My favorite player growing up was Thurman Thomas. Both my parents are from upstate New York, so we grew up pretty big Bills fans, and they obviously had some great teams. So Thurman Thomas would be at dinner. Growing up in Boston, probably Tom Brady. Although, you know what? I'm going to go Bill Belichick over Tom Brady. Not that I'm saying one had more impact on the success than the other, because I don't want to get into that debate. But as a coach, there'd probably be a little bit more knowledge I could gain at that dinner from him. My third, John Madden. Played that video game a lot growing up for many years, so want him at the table and want to pick his brain on kind of the entire process. He saw it from just about every angle.
I think he's going to fit in really like a glove. To be a really good coordinator, I think you have to know all of it. You have to know the run game, you have to know protections, and certainly the pass game. Drew, he checks every one of those boxes, man. It's about somebody being detailed, have knowledge of it, man, enthusiastic, good communicator, all of those things. So before I even brought Drew in, every time we had crossover tape, I loved watching his offense. I just thought he was pretty creative. I thought the run game had a lot of versatility, the play pass. They found ways to move the football. The guy's very calm, he's very confident, and he fits us. He fits us.
I think one of the things that's so exciting about being here in Detroit in this organization is, the history, the culture, the fan base, and just how much it means to the city. And just seeing how much it meant to everybody, how they went about their business, from ownership on down. I think it's just such an unbelievable organization to be a part of. And then obviously, one of the things that makes this job exciting is the players. And to be able to come into this roster and this opportunity to coach these guys and work with these guys, knowing the talents are there, knowing that there's some work to be done, just extremely excited on so many different levels. I think Ford Field and the atmosphere on game days probably, if not the best, it's right there. Having come in, I played here twice on Thanksgiving, played here 6 straight years, and I feel like I've played here. I actually played Buffalo here, which is kind of crazy. Not a lot of people could say that. But I do. I think what makes the atmosphere so special is the fans. I think the passion that they pour into the game and the team and the organization makes it a special place to coach, a special place to play, and just thrilled to be a part of it. It seems like a really special place with a lot of great people, and to me, that's what this business is about. What's up, Lions Loyal?
There you go, man. Look, I love it. I love his energy, and I think he's got that, that little wrinkle there that it's on his face. It kind of gives him that resting F face. He looks like he's just angry. He's just ready to go. That's what he looks like, man.
He does.
But when he smiles, he lights up a room too. Look, I think that Drew's perfect for this team. And Dan said it best, honestly, that when you look at the crossover tape, and I'm glad that he mentioned that specifically, how watching his run game and watching the diversity that run game brings to the table. Look, if David Montgomery stays, that little screen pass that you saw there, not only will that be going to Gibbs, but David Montgomery is probably one of the best catching a screen pass in stride. He's not a guy that can sit on dead weight, and he's not as fast as like a Jahmyr Gibbs, the short area burst. In the screen game, catching it in stride is so important, but oftentimes you're not. Oftentimes you are doing a little curl back, and you're almost on your heels at the time that you catch the football. And that's where Jahmyr Gibbs is going to be explosive, creating some of those missed tackles. But David Montgomery, he forces missed tackles. So there's a lot of things to love about the opportunity that Drew Petzing brings to the table. So once again, Drew, man, I know you're probably not listening, but we love you here, and we appreciate you. I hope you have a great season. I'm sure that we'll be seeing you at the Combine and or at camp, this year, and hopefully get an opportunity to chat, at least get a couple of questions in. I just saw Manu's name in the chat. I totally forgot about what Panay Sewell said on Giovanni Manu. Did you see that?
No, I did not.
Okay. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
But I got two quick things on this little
Go for it while I'm looking this up.
video. So the first thing is, can you tell that Dan Campbell looks like he might have learned his lesson on how to hire an offensive coordinator in that video? I think he got torched a couple times with Anthony Lynn and with Johnny Morton, and I think he learned his lesson. You need to put out a wide net, and you need to find somebody that truly fits your offense. And then the second thing was,
well, hold on there, because I got to respond to that.
Okay,
I don't think that Dan Campbell learned anything. I think that Dan Campbell didn't have a choice the last year when we hired Morton, because they were trying to do and run the same thing that they were doing the year before, and they were not trying to change it up. So if you bring in an offensive coordinator, they are going to want to run their own thing, right? And this is something that I kept saying
that's
about.
what I mean, he's learned this year. You got to let the guy do it his way.
But he didn't learn, right? Because they were trying to run the same offense.
Yeah.
And so
now he's learned from that.
But I think that was the right thing to do. I think the problem was the disconnect. As we heard, Petzing say, he's going to be on the sideline. He's done it both ways, but it's that instant having a relationship with your quarterback on the field and being able to have those important, everything that I said about Morton being in the box last year, Petzing yesterday just said and validated everything that I was talking about. You need to have the ability to talk to your players on the field, in the moment, at a timeout, in between, possessions. It is super important. Look, other coaches can do it, right? They've been able to do it, and I get that. This is not. I just don't feel like this is that style of an offense that it would work. Clearly, it didn't. But I guess what I'm saying about Dan here is he was trying to keep the same thing. And I think Morton was more of not really an offensive coordinator, but just a game manager. I think that he was really brought in to try to run the same offense, doing what Dan wanted him to do, and then taking the reins to do it, calling some plays. Here's the playbook, make it work. And it just didn't work out. So whether he learned from that or now they're transitioning to a totally different offense, but it's also going to stay the same. The difference is you have a high-level offensive coordinator that can call any style of an offense. Those don't exist.
Yeah.
They really don't. And so Dan didn't have someone he probably trusted last year that could come in and do exactly what he thought, what he wanted to get done. He probably just didn't have the faith in maybe the people that were available. Maybe he didn't look hard enough. But I feel like they were kind of strapped a little bit. I mean, everyone seemed to be hired up pretty quickly. By that divisional round, it seemed like there was a lot of moves that seemed to already be made. And Ben Johnson, again, he was on a plane the next day. So I don't know how much, information they really had, because even Brad Holmes was asked the question. I think Dan was asked the question, did you know that he was going to Chicago the next day? And they kind of gave the answer like they didn't really know. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
So that kind of makes me believe that maybe they were left like, we just now finding out. that it was an actual done deal. And that's why I put on the tinfoil hat and I say something stinks there. Because if they truly didn't know, right, just like, just like with Kirby's injury, if they truly didn't know, then something's not right. If Ben Johnson didn't keep them in the loop, and then they're left holding the bag, and they didn't start interviewing and couldn't interview fast enough, then what? I don't know. But anyway, you had a second point.
Yeah, so the second point in there, when Drew Petzing, when they show him with the hat on, he looks like he's 20 years old. He looks much younger with a hat on. I know he shaves his head for all the bald people out there, but looks much younger with a hat on.
I think he looks young either way. I mean, he is young. He's younger than us.
Yeah. But I was going to say the same thing about the resting bee face. Yeah, he seems to have a very scowl look to him.
All right. I don't know why I can't find this. Hold on here.
People in the chat are asking about Meeks turning him into a tight end since he was such a late round draft pick.
So let me be clear here. There's no just turning guys into tight ends, right?
Yeah.
There's you can't just take any player and say, "Oh, you're a tight end now." Like that doesn't work. The only reason why Tesla, in my opinion, could run the tight end routes, be that third tight end, and put on 10 or 12 or 15 pounds. The reason why that works is 1, he has the size. 2, he has the frame. 3, he has the speed. And adding 10 to 15 pounds is not going to slow him down, but like 5/100ths of a second. So if he runs 4.4, he's going to run 4.45. Right? That's what the analytics say about weight and speed. They've done all sorts of testing. When a player gains this much, how much faster do they get? If a player loses this much, how much faster do they get? Or how much slower do they get? How much faster do they get? So the numbers are out there. And I went on a site and I put the calculations in, and that's what it said. The reason why, again, Tesla makes more sense is he's 1 inch taller than Sam Laporta, and he's 20 pounds to 25 pounds lighter at the very most. So if you were to meet that number in the middle, and he was a lighter end of the tight end size, he has the wingspan, he has the speed, he has the height. If he's 225, he's not going to slow down much. And all I'm saying is you're asking him to run as a receiving tight end, not as a blocking tight end. Now, in the 13 personnel, you need 2 blocking tight ends and a receiving tight end. If Sam Laporta is healthy, he's your receiving tight end, and he can block pretty well. If he's not as healthy and you need Tesla to fill in, he can absolutely do it. But it's never going to look or be called 13 personnel if he's in tight. They're going to call it 12 because they're not going to consider him a tight end. So all I'm saying is you put him in some of those situations to run the tight end routes as a pass catcher, right? Not a blocker. And what it does is it throws the defenses off. However, with him in the game, I think the issue is defenses are going to then roll with their nickel package, not their bigger, heavier packages. And that's really what you're trying to do with 13 personnel is have them bring in their heavy package, and then you do something unique out of it. You got to beat them with speed. And that's where Kyle Pitts makes a lot of sense too. He makes a ton of sense. Real quick here, Penei Sewell had a quick conversation here about Taylor Decker and what's going on with Taylor Decker. And in a nutshell, here's what he had said. So talking about Taylor Decker's retirement, potential retirement, is he going to retire? Here's what he had said. He said, I give Big Dog his space. He's been in it for quite some time now, so he deserves it. And whatever he decides, it's the best thing for him. Oh, what else did he say? I think that's really it. But then Decker said this. He said, I told my wife this about a week and a half ago. Decker said this after the Bears game. He says, you know how in those fantasy-like medieval shows, there's like that old warrior, and he just wants to die in battle. And I feel like that's how I feel, but I can't. I can't do that because it's just not me. It doesn't just affect me, hypothetically speaking about it, and that makes it harder. That makes it so much harder because I know I can still play, but what is that going to make the future of my family look like and my future? So clearly Decker's having the thought process of retiring this year. I think that we all understand that. My plan for you, Deck, is this. Bro, just go retire. And be ready to unretire. If the Lions need you in week 9, you stay ready. It's that simple. Go retire. Open up the salary cap for the Lions so that they go win a Super Bowl. The Lions should bring you back anyway so that you can go win that Super Bowl and just plan on coming back after the bye week. Hopefully we have a later bye week.
Hey, Will.
Hey, Eric.
Will you put up a poll? Should Taylor Decker retire, yes or no?
Sure, I'll put it up. So Sewell then had this to say. He said, at the end of the day, you just got to perform, and the new guys that come in, we lost a lot of vets, and it's hard to replace those guys. So I think, again, it falls on my shoulders because I've been in the room where all those vets were accountable, and you didn't really have to worry about it. But now we have new guys. It's kind of a different feel. So, yeah, that's a thing about going into this next year. I just got to show up. So Penei Sewell is taking this next season hard. He's taking it more personal, and he's going to take that room over, which that's not a bad thing. I think he's been, the front runner in that room with Deck, but Deck clearly, being the elder statesman in the room, has been running that room now for several seasons. But Sewell had some things to say about Giovanni Manu, and I don't know why I can't find it, but essentially he was saying that Giovanni Manu is a better athlete than him. Is, that type of size, you all the things that I say about Manu. Sewell was saying, you don't see that kind of size, extremely rare and gifted with his feet, how fast he moves. He's bigger, faster, stronger than me. And so Sewell being the competitor that he is, had no second thoughts about giving Manu his praise in saying that, like, this dude's for real. And I'm humble enough to be able to say that and recognize that this dude is better than me from the standpoint of, size, height, weight, speed, all that good stuff. From a player standpoint, obviously Penei Sewell is Penei Sewell. We know that. Manu's not to that level. Not even close. But, Eric, you said it best the other day. He's had one game, albeit not a great game, of experience in the NFL. You give Manu 3, 4, 5 weeks of experience, and it's going to have to ramp up quick because that's all you can give him. He's going to be a much better player. And whether that's swing tackle or as a backup, whatever, hopefully it's a swing tackle role, and the Lions go out and find another left tackle. Finding one in free agency is not going to be easy. So that's that. I'll put the poll up. We'll take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get into Maxx Crosby, and then we're going to get into roster building 101 and free agency top board landing spots for your Detroit Lions free agents. Who's coming to Detroit? We're going to find out here in just a few moments. As soon as I can find my break. There we go.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jameer Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle, got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra St. Brown. Amon-Ra St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions. Snap taken by Mariota. Wants to throw it. Gonna get hit. Gonna get sacked.
Yes,
Take it down.
sir.
Brian Branch got him second time today.
Nice job.
Hands it to Gibbs, running right, runs through a tackle, gets down to the 10, Gibbs through the 5, still fighting down to the 2, down to the 1, to the end zone!
Yes.
Touchdown, Detroit Lions! He did not quit!
Nice job.
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down again!
All right, Mad Maxx Crosby is not happy, and there's been a ton of rumors. Now, Eric, you've got an amazing piece of information that you're going to share with us here in just a few moments after we get through the audio here of Mad Maxx. And I just have to say, everything that I've been saying about Max on the possibility of him coming to Detroit, highly unlikely for multiple reasons. But most importantly, it would be the cost. And when we get into roster construction, we're going to hear, now there's so many things that I really wanted to play today. We're just not going to have time for, but you're going to hear why when I talk about tier 2 guys. At least I hope it's in this audio clip. But when I talk about tier 2 guys, namely guys like AJ Epinesa, who's at the top of my free agency list again this year, why they are so much more important than a guy like Maxx Crosby. It's not because of Maxx Crosby's ability. It's not because Maxx Crosby isn't elite. It's because of the cost and what it does to your future and what it does to your future roster building. And it's not just about one season. And quite honestly, you can miss me with the whole idea where people say we're just one player away. That's never been true. It's never been true about any team. And it never will be true. You know, for instance, the Packers were one player away last year. Were they not, Eric? Right?
Did you happen to see my shirt today?
No. What does it say? FTP? Nice. They were one player away, right?
Yeah.
They brought in that one player. They brought in that one player.
Listen, before this season started, through the first 5 weeks of this season, the Packers were number 1 in every power poll. They were 5-0 or 5-1. And listen, that trade for Micah Parsons was sending them to the Super Bowl. They had the best odds to win the Super Bowl, and everyone had them as the best team in football. Well, guess what? That one player, it didn't work. They were not one player away.
Yeah. Well, you know what happens is let's just say you are that one player away, and then that player gets injured. Well, then you can cash in the season, right? Well, that's kind of what happened to the Packers. But you know what? The Packers were so much further than one player away. So much further. And that was clear and evident in the way that they finished their season.
5 losses.
Yeah. That wasn't just because of one player. I'm sorry. You know,
Backed into the playoffs and lost in the first round to the Bears.
Well, they didn't have Micah Parsons the year before, and they didn't have a 5-loss run at the end, did they?
No.
Nope, they sure didn't. All right, let's listen to Mad Maxx here, NFL Network, brought to you by the Insiders. Let's hear what they have to say.
Today, and the question was, what's the most intriguing storyline of the offseason? This is it right here for me. Maxx Crosby, not only recovering from that meniscus repair, Ian, as you so detailed on Sunday, but also a potential trade situation. Here is Crosby on the Let's Go podcast with Jim Gray regarding his future. Not saying much, though.
Max, who speaks for you?
Me.
Okay.
Me.
Been a lot of stuff going on here during Super Bowl week. What's up with all this?
My focus has been on getting healthy because that's all I can control right now. That's all that matters to me is being with my daughters and being with my wife and taking care of myself. People are going to have rumors. I just looked at my phone. I've been working all morning. I got another, everyone's hit me up. Did you say this? I can't control that. You earn that as a player. If I wasn't doing the right things and if I wasn't the person and player I was, people wouldn't be talking about all the nonsense, but that's what comes with it. If you have drama, if you have a losing season, they just try to throw gasoline on the fire and make, things a certain way. And for me, I know what I'm about. I know what I represent. You know what I mean? I really don't care what everybody has to say. But yeah, I had an obligation. Happened to be a big media day for some reason the day before. And I already had that scheduled weeks in advance. So I had to go and get in front of a mic that I really didn't want to do. But I'm a man of my word, and I got to show up and do what I do. So people are going to ask those questions. It's funny. On top of that, it just shows like how the industry is. My team and stuff like that, they're like, in advance, we don't want to talk about drama. Everyone's already heard his answer. He's given his answer. Every single person that I went and interviewed, they completely disregarded what we said before and asked immediately.
I can't believe that, Max. Someone would talk about your future without your permission. Can't believe it.
I am
right now
stunned to
we're
find
going
out
to
this
talk
happens.
about Maxx Crosby's future. Respectfully, Ian, respectfully. I've got some thoughts. Give us your best read on the situation. Again, with that context of the injury you provided on NFL Game Day on Sunday.
I always love Jim Gray kind of shrugging off reporting and rumors and innuendo. It's like, well, sometimes there's actual real reporting with actual facts by professionals who do this for a living. I don't know. Anyway, so let's talk about Maxx Crosby. It is a complicated situation. Maxx Crosby did not add much, or plenty of people, as he said, speaking for him during Super Bowl week. My understanding, and this is something that I discussed on Super Bowl Sunday, not rumor, not innuendo, he did have a meniscus repair, which, although a relatively minor one, Mike, it's measured in weeks, in months, not weeks. Months, not weeks. So really what that means is it's hard to imagine a team trading for Maxx Crosby without him being fully healthy and able to pass the physical, which probably moves his timeline closer to the draft or maybe before the season. That means if the Las Vegas Raiders want to, one, convince Maxx Crosby that he should be able to be back, or two, do right by him, which certainly seems to make a lot of sense for Mark Davis to do right by one of their most loyal guys. They have plenty of time to milk and get as much draft capital as they possibly can. This is a building roster. It is a rebuilding roster. Trading him makes sense. Just don't know when or if that's going to happen.
Look, Maxx Crosby's had, including interims, I believe, six head coaches in 7 years. That's the kind of stuff that we talk about with coordinators, that there's coordinator turnover. At the head coaching position, for a guy like this, who all things equal, would love to be a Raider for life, but all things are not equal, and this is a potential reboot again for this franchise. In the NFL, you can turn things around relatively quickly, but when you do this now for the third or fourth time and you're trying to sell Maxx Crosby on it, that's a tough sell for a guy that plays hard for a team that just hasn't been playing many relevant games. One playoff game in his career. And I know he's itchy to play in more of those postseason games. So in the end, it's a two-way street. Like, the Raiders have to make their decision first about what they prefer to do, and then have conversations with Maxx Crosby to help potentially facilitate a trade, a la Micah Parsons somewhat. This is a somewhat similar situation. So I think it's going to take a little bit of time before this plays out. Around the scouting combine, some conversations closer to the league year, and then, as you detailed, Ian, perhaps leading up to the draft. So this could be something we're talking about at length for the next couple of weeks,
better buckle
if
up.
not months. Buckle up. Sit tight. We are getting there.
Well, I don't think we're getting anywhere with any of this conversation because, honestly, Eric, I think it's all BS. And I need to I need to look at a couple of things real quick, or I looked at a couple of things real quick. They mentioned that they've had, several head coaches in Raiders in Vegas, and Maxx was drafted 2019. Okay, so his first season in 2019 was John Gruden. Well, John Gruden lasted through 2021, and then they had interim head coach Rick Bisaccia, and then it was Josh McDaniels in 22. He lasted a whole season. And then it was Antonio Pierce filling in 23. And then Pete Carroll came back last year. And then now it's Clint Kubiak. So John Gruden, interim Rick Bisaccia, Josh Daniels for a year, interim Antonio Pierce. Well, Josh Daniels for McDaniels for 2 seasons. And then Pete Carroll. And now Clint Kubiak. That is 6 head coaches in, wow, was that 7 years? That's insane. That is insane. That is your Detroit Lions in a nutshell pre-2020. That's what that is. And that doesn't work out. And so just like Matthew Stafford said, I'm done. I'm not going through another rebuild. I'm just not doing it. And I don't want to have to redo it. If I'm going to redo an offense, I'm going to do it elsewhere. At the same time, I think that Brad Holmes knew he was going to get some pretty hefty draft picks back, and it made a lot of sense to help the team move forward. This is not really the same case. You know why? Raiders have a boatload of money. They have plenty of draft picks. They have a decent roster. They don't have to trade Maxx. They really don't. They don't have to trade Maxx to build their team. There's been a couple of things that have been said about Maxx Crosby over the last couple of weeks. Number one, that he said, he told Tom Brady to his face, allegedly, that I'm never going to play another down as a Raider. Well, I think that based on what Maxx just said, verbatim, quote, nonsense. Verbatim, quote, gasoline. And when asked, questions like, did you say this? That's how he responds. I can't control the nonsense. When you are the player that you are, speaking for himself, this is what happens. Everyone wants to throw gasoline on a fire when you have a bad season. It's funny, Eric, because I started writing the In Brad Trust volumes, and I paused on releasing it just yet because I had to work on some other things, and I wasn't quite ready to release the first one, which is, it's going to burn everything down. But this is exactly what I wrote about. That media in general, the grimy media, that want to just create problems where there are none, create, situations or topics where there are none, and just throw gasoline on a player's life for no reason, and throw this player to the fire, feed him to the wolves after that, and you just shred these players up, and they have to deal with all this BS. Could you imagine if a fan of the Raiders that really loves Maxx Crosby, which a lot of them do, heard that he told Tom Brady he's never going to play here again? Oh, let me tell Maxx what I think. Maxx, you buddy, and you just start sending a bunch of messages to Maxx. That's what happens. They deal with death threats. They deal with all sorts of wild stuff. Why? Because some idiot wants to go and douse his career in their season in gas and make up bullshit. That's what they do so that they can get some clicks. It's not real stories. So people saying that they've got sources that Maxx doesn't want to be there, I think that Maxx just kind of cleared it up. At least that's my take. I'm taking away from this that he said it's nonsense. I know who I am. I know what I'm about. I know what I want to do. He also said in another podcast or another interview, and I believe it was with the insiders during the Super Bowl, that he just built his forever home in Vegas and he has no plans on leaving for the next 15 years. What does that mean? Does that mean that he doesn't plan on getting traded? He doesn't want to go anywhere? Didn't really say he doesn't want to be a Raider anymore? I guess I would, if you want to throw gasoline on it, I'm going to throw ice on it, I guess. No, you probably don't want to put water on gas. I don't know. Baking powder or baking soda. So he can't control the narrative. And then here's another narrative. Kubiak becomes the head coach. What happens? Well, Kubiak meets with Maxx at like, I think he said 5 or 6 in the morning. They went and had coffee. Maxx was one of the first guys in the building every day. And so they had coffee. They had a great conversation. Instead of that being the story, what they say is he didn't show up for his press conference. Oh my God, Maxx really doesn't want to be here. He didn't show up for his press conference. Well, did you read the part where they had coffee earlier in the day and had a great conversation and Kubiak said that? And then did you know that Maxx had a prior engagement that was, they don't know when they're going to hire somebody, but he had a prior engagement. You can go see if he had a prior engagement. He was on the mic somewhere. So it's that kind of stuff that bothers me, and why, media is fun. I think it can be fun for a lot of people, but I think what happens is a lot of people that are irrelevant, like, I'm not huge, I'm not big time, I'm not ESPN, I'm not any of that stuff, right? But you don't see me out here just pumping narratives just to try to make myself into something. It'll happen organically or it won't. I'm not going to be somebody or act like I'm somebody that I'm not. And I feel like that's what people do, is they just pump all this BS to get clicks, to get people to listen for that 5 minutes. And then guess what? They probably never come back to your channel because they really never wanted to be there in the first place. And then everything you said didn't come to fruition or never does. I don't understand it, but I don't think that Maxx is going anywhere. What do you think?
Personally, I don't see Maxx Crosby ever playing it down for another team. But that being said, there may be a glimmer of hope for all of the fans of NFL teams like the Bears, the Packers, the Vikings. I've seen it for the Bills, the Patriots. I've seen it for just about every team wants to get Maxx Crosby, including Lions fans, right? But Monday, during an appearance on the Pat McAfee show, Adam Schefter was asked, how many years in the future can an NFL team trade its draft picks? And as most of us know, Adam Schefter then said, well, the current rules permit trading picks for the next 3 drafts. Okay, so you'd have 26, 27, 28. That's what you are allowed to trade right now.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold on. Did you already go into the draft pick thing?
Yeah, that's what I was going into.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Oh.
Yeah, I wasn't quite ready.
I thought that's where you were at.
No, it's all good. So it's fine. Let me preface it and then just start over.
Okay.
So with the fact that I don't believe that he's ever going to be a Lion. And the reason why is most importantly it's money. It's money and it's draft picks, it's future. That is the biggest reason why Maxx will never play it down in Detroit. At least not now. Maybe towards the end of his career, yeah, I could see something happening at the tail end of his career when maybe he's not as expensive. But right now, you're talking, at least what's been speculated, more than the Micah Parsons deal. You're looking at 3 first-round picks?
Yeah.
Okay. How is that going to work? Are we willing to give up this year's and next year's and the year after that? Because right now you can go out 3 years. Well,
Wasn't
2. You can go out up to 3 years. So this year plus the next 2.
Yeah. So wasn't that the rumor with Trey Hendrickson a year or 2 ago? Is that the Lions offered 3 first-round draft picks, or some team did?
Some team offered 2.
Okay.
Right, and I highly doubt it was the Lions. But again, if you just pay attention to the people that pump the bullshit, you realize that everything that they say never comes to fruition. So the one thing that I learned, right, and I think that this is a phrase right from the Wolf of Wall Street. Don't judge me by my winners. Judge me by my losers because there's so very few. Right? That is I think it's a direct quote from Wolf of Wall Street. And what that essentially means in media would be judge me by the things that I print that I get right, and then, or judge me by my losers because I don't get a lot wrong, right? Judge me by my losers because I tend to be, better than the rest at, with my calls or my predictions or draft board or whatever. And I'm not saying me personally, I'm just saying what that statement kind of means. And so use that and go look at other channels or read, other articles, and then ask yourself, did they get it right? In 3, 6 months, 9 months, a year later, is that player in Detroit? And it's not so much the ones that say, should this player come to Detroit or should the Lions sign this player? It's more so, I've heard rumors, Brad Holmes had a conversation with Maxx Crosby behind closed doors and he's coming to Detroit. That kind of stuff, what's a good one?
Well, look at the Seahawks this past season. Did the Seahawks bring in a Maxx Crosby type of deal or a Micah Parsons type of deal?
We'll get into that, but there was a good one. Let's say this, like J.C. Horn. There was content flying around saying that, I heard a conversation and Brad had a conversation and J.C. Horn's on his way. He's going to come to Detroit. The Lions are traded for J.C. Horn. Lions are signing J.C. Horn. Never happened.
Really?
Right? So judge them by your losers. Absolutely. How many of them do they have? And if they are stacking a bunch of losers, then that should tell you something. Because I'll tell you right now, the reason why these guys are insiders is because they don't get a lot wrong. They are directly plugged, and they do have great information. They will speculate, just like everybody else does. But anyway, where I was going with that is I could see where Max could end up in Detroit. I'm not saying that he'll never play it down in Detroit. I just think it would be later in his career. I don't think now would fit for many reasons. And more so, the reason is draft capital, and you can't afford it. So, Eric, tell us how the Detroit Lions could afford Mad Max in Detroit.
All right. So here we go. On Monday, Adam Schefter was on the Pat McAfee show, and one of the people on the show asked him, what is the current rule for trading draft picks? How many years out can you go? And he said, you can go 3 years. But Schefter also revealed that at least one team will push this offseason to change that limit to 5 years. That would certainly be a game changer, as it would allow teams to have a ton more resources to get deals done. So that means right now, ahead of the 2026 draft, teams can trade their picks from 26, 27, and 28. But if this rule was to change, that would mean you would add in 2029 and 2030. So you could push off, you could do 3 first-round draft picks, but it would be, let's say, 27, 29, and 30. So you still have a year in between, and you still have your first round draft pick this year. So you could get really funky with it, with having 5 years worth of draft capital that you could work with. And that's not only first rounders, that's second rounders all the way through 7th. You could take anything you want and trade it 5 years out. So that would be a lot. I think you would see some more trades happening if that proposal gets put in front of the NFL and gets passed. What would you think about teams being able to trade 5 years into the future, Will? Do you think that is too far?
I think that's nuts. And again, I think that teams are now looking for ways to. I mean, that's essentially playing Madden, right? I mean, that's exactly what they're doing. They're playing Madden. If you were to allow teams to go out 5 seasons, not 3 to 4, 3 to 5, then there's going to be a ton of trades. This would amplify the market every year. It's exactly what they're trying to do. The reason why teams are not allowing players to go other places, like, let's say, Myles Garrett, I just saw that name in the chat, or, in this case, Maxx Crosby, is because they feel like it's too rich of a deal. A lot of teams can't afford it, nor do they want to afford it, especially with the way the contracts are today. But if you can essentially trade 3 picks in the future, well, for the next 2 years, you don't lose a first-round pick and you just brought an elite player. That changes the dynamic instantly. And I think that you could potentially win a Super Bowl at that point, because you could say, you know what? I'm going to trade my 3 firsts, and I'm going to go get this player. I'm going to trade my 3 seconds. I'm going to go get this player and this player. I'll trade my 3 thirds. I'm going to get this player, this player, this player. And now you've got a loaded roster for the next 5 years that you really don't need draft picks then. But then you won't be able to replenish the stock when the well dries up and the players are 33 years old. I think it's going to put a lot of teams in trouble if it's not managed right. And I think a lot of teams are going to be completely stupid with it if it does happen. Am I against the rule? I don't know yet. Is it happening? We'll find out. I don't think it will. I think for all the same reasons that I just said, Roger Goodell's probably going to look at that and say, yeah, that's going to open up a free-for-all. I don't know if I'm comfortable with that. But then again, they've done stupider stuff. What do you think? You think it's going to happen?
I actually think it might. Because there's a lot of teams that are not afraid to mortgage their futures. And just like you said, if you could... A team could technically say, I will give you my entire draft class for 2030 for those 2 players. And there's enough they could do between now and 2030 to replenish that draft class and make moves and do other things. So you could really, it's just like taking dead money and putting it on, void years. So you're just kicking that can down the road. That's just giving them the ability to kick the can even that much further. So I would expect that they could possibly do the same thing with dead void cap years as they do with draft picks, put it out 5 years instead of just 2 years. Because I think it's 2 or 3 for void years on a contract, but you could
void years is 5.
Is it 5? Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the total contract can be. Now there's certain elements to this. Let me get rid of my notes. There's certain elements to adding void years. I'm not going to go deep into it, but yeah, I think the max is 5. So if you do a how can I? Each contract's a little bit different. I don't have the rule in front of me.
I didn't think they could do 5 void years, though.
Yeah, but it's all encompassing. It might not be quite 5, but it's 5. The question is how can you do it? So if a contract has 1 year remaining, you can add up to 4 void years.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the prorated bonus amount is only over a max of 5, and that's all that is. It's just for bonus amount. So you can spread the signing bonus up to 5 years. But if there's, for every year on the contract, you lose a void year, I think is the exact way it works. So if there's 2 years, you can go out 3 more. If there's 3 years, you can go out 2 more. If there's 4 years, you can go out 1 more. Does that make sense?
Gotcha. Yeah.
Okay. So on an extension, if you sign Brian Branch to an extension, you sign it to a 3-year extension and you tack on 2 voids. So it's essentially a 5-year contract, and what you're doing is you're spreading that signing bonus out for 5 years, or any other prorated bonuses out for 5 years. But the base salary and the guaranteed money and all that is going to hit in those first 3 years. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay.
So what do you think about teams being able to trade 5 instead of 3?
Well, I think, one, there's a cap. I'm pretty positive there's a cap on how many draft picks you can have per draft. So I think that would come into play.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think you can come into a draft and have 16 draft picks. I'm pretty sure there's a hard cap.
Look and see.
Yeah, I was trying to look up the rules, but I don't have the. I have the rule book. I have the rule book in a PDF.
Yeah. Good old AI says that while there's no strict hard maximum cap on the total number of picks an NFL team can hold, each team is guaranteed 7 picks, 1 per round through trades, and up to 32 awarded compensatory picks. But that's it. But rarely have more than 12 to 15 picks in a single draft has ever happened.
Yeah, I want to say that there is a hard cap.
I thought there was too.
Or maybe there used to be, maybe there's not now, but we'll come back to that. I don't want to put out bad information. So we'll have to come back to that next week if we remember to do it. All right, so as far as Mad Max, man, is he coming to Detroit? Look, it's a hard no. Unfortunately, people are going to use this to get views and clicks over the next couple of weeks, and then what they're going to find out is they didn't get their way, and they'll just crash out and say that the season's a failure and fire Brad Holmes. That's what they'll say.
But if we can trade 5 years out, we can trade for Maxx Crosby.
Yeah, the thing about that too is that's not going to happen for a couple of years, so I'm sure Max will be 3 more years into this before that rule gets changed.
Well, they're trying to change it for this draft.
If they changed it for this draft, then okay. So there's the gamble. If they get a 5-year rule done this year, then Max will be in Detroit. Absolutely, or some big free agent will be in Detroit.
Yeah.
All right, but that's where I want to go next. We're going to go to free agents. Actually, let's go to roster building. When we get back, we'll start with some free agents, landing spots coming potentially into Detroit. What's the odds? And then we're going to go right into roster building and hear from former NFL executive Bill Polian. Be right back.
Throwing middle, caught inside the 5. Jahmyr Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Amon-Ra, St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions. Snap taken by Mariota. Wants to throw it. Gonna get hit. Gonna get sacked.
Yes,
Take it down. Brian Branch got him second time today.
Nice job.
Hands it to Gibbs, running right, runs through a tackle, gets down to the 10, Gibbs through the 5, still fighting, down to the 2, down to the 1, to the end zone! Yes. Touchdown, Detroit Lions! He did not quit!
Nice job.
Off to throw again, does, middle, J-Mo angling to the end zone, touchdown Detroit Lions! J-Mo flips into the end zone for 6.
Nice job.
Pressured by Hutchinson, he goes down again!
All right, we're back. Let's get into a couple of free agent landing spots. Top 5 here. According to Fox, I believe they put this out. I think it was Fox. Maybe it wasn't Fox. Let me get it open here. Top free agency landing list, Eric. I believe that's the one we're looking for.
Yeah.
There we go.
The 5 best interior offensive linemen.
Yes, you got it. So we know that the Lions need offensive line, and I got to be honest. I've said this a couple of times. This free agency period's kind of thin. If you're looking for a left tackle, if you're looking for an interior offensive lineman, there's plenty of options. If you're looking for a center, there's a handful of options. And the number one name that is trending towards Detroit, which makes way more sense than any other free agent out there, is who?
Linderbaum.
Linderbaum. I would agree. And Tyler Linderbaum, well, they're saying that the best landing spot is Seattle. Now, I didn't know that Seattle needed a center this year. I guess I haven't looked to see if their center is a free agent. Possibly they are. Must be. If they're saying that Seattle is the best landing spot. So if you're a Detroit Lion and you're hoping that Tyler Linderbaum's going to end up in Detroit, well, that may not be the case. His PFF free agency ranking is number 3. He is the third highest ranked free agent on the market this season. Eric, you wanna run through what they're saying here?
Sure. So it says 2 teams ran the ball on more than 45% of their offensive plays this past season, the Seattle Seahawks and the Baltimore Ravens. Linderbaum has been a key piece of the Ravens' ground success since entering the league in 2022, with his 91.2 PFF run blocking grade, ranking 3rd among centers, with career marks above the 85th percentile in both gap and zone blocking schemes. Linderbaum will fit perfectly into the Seahawks' diverse run game. Undrafted second-year center Jalen Sundell made huge strides over his first season as a starter, but Linderbaum would undoubtedly upgrade Seattle's unit, even though they don't need a center. Currently projected to hold the 6th most cap space at $72.2 million in the NFL this season, the Seahawks can be aggressive in improving what was already a Super Bowl winning roster. Now, you just won a Super Bowl with your center, Jalen Sundell, and he's a second-year undrafted center. Why would you not stick with your Super Bowl winning going into his 3rd-year center? That makes no sense to me why you would go off of what was already working. Have to look at this Jalen Sundell and see if he was really bad and how he played this year. I'm going to look him up real quick.
So you just read, what they were saying about Tyler Linderbaum, right?
Yep.
The 2 teams that ran the ball more, 45% on their offensive plays this past season, the Hawks and the Ravens. Now, Linderbaum, I did some deep work on him and he's one of my free agent profiles. I don't think I did one on him yet, but I just did another one under my new. I'm putting a new system together that is going to hopefully mold into a magazine. That's the goal. That I do these really deep free agency profiles, NFL prospect profiles, and I want to turn it into an annual thing that you can purchase and get access to. Right now, everyone just gets access for free. But when I transition to it, it's going to be something that I do every year. And when I put it out, you'll unlock everything that I'm putting together. And it's not so much just my takes on everything as it is, this is a true profile on what, the film work showed and what other people are saying about the guys. But a true free agency profile from a scouting perspective. Linderbaum is an amazing athlete. I'll just say that. Here's a little known fact about Tyler Linderbaum. I don't remember the year, but I want to say that he grew up in Iowa, if memory serves me. I don't have my profile in front of me. I want to say he grew up in Iowa, and he was a wrestler. Okay, he was a wrestler. And back then, he at, whatever weight he was at, was going up against another known guy by the name of Tristan Wirfs. Now, Tristan Wirfs was the, I don't know if he was like the reigning champion or whatever. Linderbaum pinned his ass, beat him. And he was like 45 pounds heavier than Linderbaum. That's massive. These are two heavyweights going at it. And he's 45 pounds heavier. And so that right there should tell you the amount of strength that Linderbaum has, number one. Number two, being a former wrestler, you have to win in small spaces, right? You have to be really good with the hand fighting techniques, body positioning. It's all about leverage. And he used that and transitioned that into the league. He fought his way up from day one. Matter of fact, I'm trying to go from memory here. It'll be better when I actually bring up the profile, another day. But I want to say that he started off as a guard in college, and then he didn't get much playing time, and then transitioned to center. Or no, was he defensive tackle? And then transitioned to center, I think is the transition. And then he ends up being like the number one center in college in his first year. So this guy's just not like a molded center from day one. He transitioned to that. So yes, transitioning to other positions can happen. It can happen. Tesla to tight end. It can't happen. But Linderbaum, to me, the more and more I kept digging on this guy, can do it all. Now, the Ravens, you're going to have to respect my memory here. I want to say we're running more of a wide zone gap, or more of a wide zone, outside zone style of a run attack. And so he can do that. Right, he can get up into that second level. He can erase, the linebackers. He can get out and seal off the edges, create those internal running lanes. Why couldn't he do that in Detroit? Right, he's one of the best, most athletic centers in the league. When we think of a guy by the name of Frank Ragnow, one of the things that he separated himself from the rest with was his athleticism. The second thing was his strength. Probably the number one thing, honestly, was his intelligence, and then his athleticism and his strength. But if we're talking about on-field play versus cerebral, Frank Ragnow was one of the best ever. I would love to say he would be a Hall of Famer someday, but I just don't know that he's going to get the love. Linderbaum can do what Frank Ragnow did to a degree. I would never class anybody to Frank Ragnow. But if we're looking for a replacement, And Eric, I don't know if you heard me say this the other day because I don't remember where I said it. I don't think it was on the morning show. I think what a lot of fans forget or general public forgets is our rush attack, our run game was less to blame on Morton, was less to blame on Dan Campbell. It was more to blame on the personnel and not having a center. The center is the key to unlock it all. If you don't have a center that can dictate the leverage in the middle of an offensive line, I'll go back to what I used to teach kids at a young age about playing offensive line. And I'm not an offensive line coach, but I used to coach football. Is this. You got your chain link. You got your chain link. You break that center, and what happens? You're left with two pieces of chain. Well, this chain's drifting this way, and this chain is drifting that way. The minute you separate the center, the rest of the guys are easy to pick off. If that center keeps everything intact, well, it's pretty hard to break down that wall, right? And if they can build their wall and their spacing is correct, it's pretty hard to penetrate a good offensive line. Wingspan's got to be there, arm length, wide bodies, big bodies, foot speed. But if that center can do his job, almost everything else will fall in line. What was our biggest detractor last year? Graham Glasgow. He could not hold up. He was not quick enough. And when he broke down, everything broke down. That is the difference of this season. So when I say it's less about Morton and it's less about Dan Campbell, it's more about the center in the run game. If you have a center that can do it, the Lions should be able to do it. I'm more inclined with seeing the Lions go after a Tyler Linderbaum than any other player in free agency. Tyler Linderbaum, AJ Epinesa, those are my two biggest free agents. I think that they can do it. Of course, we're going to find out here in just a couple of weeks what the Lions are going to be dealing with as far as, cap space. There's going to be some negotiations with a couple of contracts, and then that'll tell us everything we need to know. If they're going to be players, then they're going to open up the checkbook, right? And they're going to unlock some money. If they don't unlock some money, I'll put a number to it, Eric. If they unlock, if they have 50 million, they're not players. If they get closer to 80 million, they're players. Those are the numbers I'm looking for. Because they'll get to 50, right? You roll over 20, you start out at, 5, 6, 7, million positive. You add 30, you're already at 35. You only have to do a little bit of work to get to 50. But if you unlock another 30 or 40, there's a reason for that. And that is not trade deadline. That it, it is, but it isn't. That is now. That is free agency now. What do you think about Tyler Linderbaum?
I like him. I also like the center from the Bills. I think Brad Holmes' MO has been the same in every free agency period for 5 years. He has done the exact same thing. He gets one or two starters, and the rest are role pieces. Just they're pawns. They're not the queen piece that you need to go any direction. So his big money spending is on one or two players. The rest are small time. They're the Roy Lopez, the like the guys that they got from Philly, and just if he does anything different than he's done in the years past, it would very, very surprise me. So to see two big free agency signings, I could see where we get either the best center or the second best center, and we do get an edge rusher. Because you're going to lose Muhammad most likely, but maybe he pays up for Muhammad. I don't know. Maybe we get him back, and that is what I would see. And then the rest of them are going to be smaller bit role players like Maddox and Rockhound and Roy Lopez, those kind of signings. Those are the ones that make a huge difference for not a lot of money, and you don't see them coming. So I would not be surprised to see a safety, another corner, maybe a backup quarterback. Maybe we re-sign our backup quarterback that we have right now. I don't know, but it wouldn't surprise me to see someone like Jacoby Brissett come in because he has ties with Petzing, or Jameis Winston because he has ties with Kafka. Now that we have these two new offensive gurus in the house, and one was, where they were both offensive coordinators, and then one was a temporary head coach, they have all these relationships with all these guys that are going to be free agents this year. So don't be surprised if we pull in a free agent or two that are that have ties with Kafka or Petzing. And I don't know if either of them have any ties with Linderbaum whatsoever, but I don't believe they do.
I'm less worried about ties.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about that at all. I guess to some degree, I think some players make more sense when you have ties with a player.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's one thing that we have to probably keep into frame here, and that is our coaching roster has been with this team now for 5 seasons mostly. Calvin Shepard's been here since his first time ever coaching in the league. Petzing has been around, and he may be the only one that has ties elsewhere to players. But when you look at players that have been in the league now for 5+ seasons, like now you're talking about vets, right? Older vets. And to look at where, maybe Dan had crossover with players, you're talking 6+ seasons ago. You're starting to get into some guys that are, pushing 30 years old. So if we're looking at ties, you're looking at 30+ year old players. If you're looking at Dan or Calvin Shepard or, some of the other guys, right? Drew Petzing's kind of different because he's younger, new to the team, and he might have some ties that are a little bit younger. So I'm less concerned about the ties, but I think you're right.
I'm talking for more of the bit players. Okay. Not the stand-up.
What's a bit player?
Agents.
What do you mean?
Like the guys like Rockhound and Maddox, your backup players, not guys you're signing to be day one starters. Role players.
I'm sorry,
because there's going to be a lot of role players that we have to bring in free agency with limited money. Because if you spend a bunch of money on Linderbaum, that's going to be less that you can pay for a backup safety. And correct me if I'm wrong, but isn't either Maddox or Rockhound a free agent?
They all are, I believe.
Yeah. Because then you got Amik Robertson, who's a free agent. You have Alex Anzalone, who's a free agent. There's a bunch of them. And you got to get some of these guys to come back. And I think Maddox and Rockhound were great compliments to this team. Not so much starters, but when you needed them in a pinch, they came through.
All right, so I found some of my work here on Linderbaum, and I do plan on getting some articles out, some videos this weekend. I know I say it every day. I've had a rough week. Big time rough week this week. Had a lot to do. Here's some of the opening statements that I had about Linderbaum. He grew up in wrestling culture. It was Iowa. It was Salone, Iowa. He dominated the mat long before he commanded, playing football, or long before he wanted to play football. He was a rare 4-sport athlete. His athletic identity was defined by a heavyweight match where he pinned and NFL All-Pro Tristan Wirfs despite the 45-pound weight disadvantage. The leverage-based dominance translated to Salone High School, where he starred as a defensive tackle. I guess my memory was right there, not a center. Committing to the University of Iowa as a defender, Linderbaum then faced a pivotal career crossroad when coaches identified his elite movement skills and demanded a switch to offense. A move that he initially resisted, but eventually attacked just like he did wrestling. Obsessive, right? Linderbaum's junior season was a masterclass in technical violence as he graded out as the nation's top center and became the 12th unanimous consensus All-American in Iowa history. Capping his collegiate career with the Remington Trophy, he proved that leverage and processing speed could neutralize superior pass rushers, superior mass, right? Guys that are bigger than him. When he left Iowa City, not just as a converted defensive tackle, but as the most technically gifted interior prospect of his generation. He was then selected 25th overall in the first round by the Baltimore Ravens. He entered the NFL as a very rare first-round center, and I don't know why they say rare, because we did this a month ago. I looked at all of the first round, because people kept saying you don't take centers in the first round. Well, there's usually been one, if not every year, every other year, there's been a center drafted in the first round. Maybe you go 3 years in between at the very most. It all depends on who's coming out, right? But he instantly validated his draft stock by earning a Pro Bowl, earning Pro Bowl honors, and really redefined that geometry of the modern pocket. I mean, he's just been absolutely incredible since he's been in the league. Let me see if I can find the rest of my work here. I was breaking it up in chunks. So at a glance, he's unrestricted free agent. He's 25. He's only 6'2", so that means Jared Goff has plenty of sight line over top of him, right? 305 pounds. He runs the 40 in sub 5, 4.98. 10-inch hands, big hands, which means firm grip on the football. If there's one thing that I value the most about a center, you can imagine it's hand size. Those guys need to have mitts. I mean, big paws. He has short arms, 31 and an eighth. It's not ideal, right? When you look at guys with short arms as a tackle, it's not ideal as a guard, but as a center, it's not as critical to have the super long arms. And matter of fact, if you look at the top 10 centers ever to play the game, I'm willing to bet, based off my knowledge, that the average arm length is probably 32 inches. That's my guess. My guess from research and time that I've spent, evaluating all these guys. Now, he's only been in the league since 2022, first round pick. Like I said, pick 25. He's already made just under $13.5 million. He had a Liz Frank sprain in 2022's preseason. He had an ankle sprain in 2023 in week 14. And then in week 3 of this last season, he had a minor knee sprain. So not unhealthy, right? He's had a pretty decent career as far as injuries are concerned. Now, when you look at a player that enters the league as the highest graded center prospect of the PFF era, Linderbaum faced immense pressure just to justify the first round selection at a very non-premium position. I think the league has changed, Eric. I think that center is a premium position. When you look around the league, you got 32 of them, right? And if you got one of the best, you got one for the next decade. So you want to talk about I believe what is a premium position. I think center, just like quarterback, might be the most important two positions on your team. To be honest with you, I don't know. How do you feel? Do you think this? I mean, just look at what happened to the Lions last year.
Yeah, center is huge, and most fans did not realize until Frank was gone just how important Frank Ragnow was to this team. I didn't realize it. I thought that what's his face was going to step right in and be fine because he was our center before. Glasgow. I thought he was going to be just fine. He played center in Denver. He played center here. I thought he's done it multiple seasons before. He can do it again. Well, with a rookie guard to his right and basically a rookie guard to his left, and then a battered left tackle, and you had multiple people play left tackle for us last year, it just didn't work. He couldn't do it all, and I think that's what he was trying to do. He's trying to do everything. I think his best days are as a backup now.
Glasgow, you're talking about.
Yeah, Glasgow, or not even on the team anymore. I really do believe that this might be the end for Glasgow. Whether that means he gets cut, he retires, he goes somewhere else, gets traded, whatever, or he just comes back as a backup. I do not see him starting as the starting center for the Detroit Lions day one, game one this season.
So a little bit deeper on Linderbaum here. Again, these are really long profiles. I'm not going to try to chew up all of you guys' time this morning with it, but he allowed 0 sacks in his debut as a rookie. Baltimore runs one of the most complex run schemes. And so when you have an undersized center, getting washed out by NFL nose tackles, Linderbaum went the other direction and proved that his wrestling background was a very functional superpower in utilizing that leverage to neutralize those 330, 340-pound guys while offering the screen game mobility that most teams simply just don't have a playbook for. And that is what I look at Linderbaum in a vacuum and I say, what do the Lions need to do this year that they haven't done in seasons past? Or maybe they got away from? Screen. You've got one of the most dynamic running backs in the league in Jahmyr Gibbs. What are we doing not running the screen game? And to your point, like I've said the same thing, but Graham was just, Graham is a great backup, and I think he's a good center if maybe Tate Rowledge played better. If there was more stability at left guard, I think that Graham would be fine. But what Graham doesn't have is he doesn't have the elite mobility. He doesn't have the functional superpower of a wrestling background, to Linderbaum status. He's older. Maybe not as strong. But he's definitely not as laterally, agile or shifty as what Linderbaum and a Frank Ragnow have been to their team in the run game, but most importantly, the screen game. So he quickly became a good leader, a vocal leader for the Ravens. He earned consecutive Pro Bowl nods, establishing himself as a premier space blocker. And even though he lacks that sheer mass of a traditional gap scheme anchor, that could be a detractor, right? We're thinking gap scheme here for Petzing, but Petzing really loves the wide zone. If you can run the wide zone, that's what Petzing wants to run. The reason why he went to gap scheme is because he didn't have the personnel. And if you listen to the interview again yesterday, when he was asked why they did X, Y, and Z, he said, look, I really don't care about traditional, like size, height, weight, speed. I care about having the better player. But we went to gap scheme because we couldn't do the wide zone. We couldn't do the outside zone, if you will. Again, Linderbaum has missed 0 starts due to injury in his first 3 seasons. So best ability is availability, right? In week 17 of 2023, he had a masterclass of a game. He posted a 91.4 PFF grade while completely erasing Christian Wilkins in the run game, clinching the AFC's number 1 seed. His rookie role, he was an immediate starter, started 17 games, allowed 0 sacks, finished as the highest graded rookie lineman. Awards and honors, 2-time Pro Bowl selection, PFWA All-Rookie Team in 2022. Breakout season in 23, year 2. I think that's when he really cemented his elite status, allowing just 1 sack on 1,089 snaps. He led all centers in screen blocking efficiency. And his availability trends, I gave him the Iron Man reliability mark. He has started, get this, Eric, 66 out of 67 possible regular season games, playing through minor ankle and back injuries throughout his time. When I go back and look at his 2025 season and evaluate it a little bit, he delivered probably his finest professional campaign this last year. He operated at a very high level, NFL's most efficient rush attack. Of course, that helped with Derrick Henry, but at the same time, I felt like their efficiency fell off, over time. And if you really want to go look at a game, go look at week 3 from 2023 and just watch how Linderbaum played against us and what we were able to do against them. We obviously took him to the woodshed. Wasn't his best game, but that'll at least give you an idea of at least who he is against us. Now, the Ravens utilized him aggressively as a puller, which is exactly what we would need, under Petzing. Frequently asked him to reach, cornerbacks on the perimeter, which is extremely tough to do. A task that no other center in the league is really able to perform. And so the size limitations, they occasionally show up against pure zero techs, power rushers, and his recovery speed and hand usage can mitigate that disaster, right? It really does. He uses perfect technique to erase the size constraints, I guess we'll say, that he has. It's kind of hard to say that someone at 305 pounds has constraints of size. Again, his best game in 25 came in week 9 against Denver, and that is up against one of the best, best pass rush teams in the league. He led the way for 280 rushing yards in a 41-10 blowout. He logged 3 pancake blocks in that game. Amazing game for him. 86.9 overall PFF grade. He was 5th among centers this year. 91.2 run block grade. Clearly, he's in the elite tier. And this might be the most impressive mark of all. 2.8% pressure rate allowed. 2.8%. So on 1,084 snaps, he allowed less than 30 or right around 30 pressures on the season. That was pretty impressive, Eric. I don't know how much more I really need to sell the guy, but I think everyone understands who he really is. The path to free agency for him, I almost feel like it's undeniable at this point that the Ravens might have to walk away. There's a perfect storm of issues kind of happening for the Ravens that could allow him to end up in Detroit. The Ravens are currently projected to be $14 million over the cap, as are the Lions. They also have massive extensions looming for some of their other core stars, and they just got a new coach. So things are probably going to shift. Now, the franchise does view him as a cornerstone player. Of course, they want to keep him, but they're going to have to explore other options and allow him to hit the market, which is pushing $19 million APY. Look, I'd pay $19 million all day for this dude, all day. And at his valuation, it is low as it appears right now. Brad Holmes better run and bring this guy a contract if he gets an opportunity. So Baltimore faces the cap hell, purgatory scenario. They need to do some restructuring just to make some things happen. So do the Lions. The Ravens transition to a more pass-heavy approach, potentially under Todd Monken. Kind of devalues the pure run blocking scheme. And his contract size is pretty big. And the franchise tag is unlikely because the offensive line tag number is inflated by these tackle contracts. So that's all I'll share right now. But there's so much more I can go into. The rest of the report goes into the scouting report, strengths, his developing areas. And then I developed a scheme and fitment test that is delivered through a set of code that I developed. And it really kind of goes in and identifies what does Petzing do? What does Kafka do? And I understand that this is Petzing's offense. But for this math problem, if you will, it's what does the player bring to the table for both? How does Kafka elevate Petzing? if Petzing is more so a run specialist, the tight formations guy, the shorter routes, short to intermediate stuff, Kafka opens that up. Kafka's more of the spread, the RPO, get vertical game. And so I think that you have to marry both of those up because I think it's going to be a blend. I think if we've already learned from Petzing, he's willing to do anything and whatever works. Like he says that a lot. Does it work? Okay, let's do it. Whatever works. So if something works, it works. All right, next on the list, we'll just run through these next two kind of quickly here because I don't have reports on these guys.
Well, I was looking up a little bit on Tyler Linderbaum while you were talking there.
Sure.
And there's some teams that are hot to trot for Tyler Linderbaum. And I don't see the Lions listed on any of these lists for teams that are hot to trot for Tyler Linderbaum. And this is straight from the Ravens wire that the Giants, the Browns, and the Chargers will be the biggest names to watch if Tyler Linderbaum hits free agency. They think that the Chargers would really, really like to solidify that offensive line for Justin Herbert. The Giants, they just hired former head coach John Harbaugh, so he's got a little bit of time with Linderbaum. And then the Browns need a center apparently. So there's three teams that could be giving the Lions a bit of competition for Tyler Linderbaum.
Okay. Sorry, my throat's just killing me. You were saying that the other teams interested in Linderbaum, Lions were not mentioned?
Yeah, the Lions were not mentioned. It was the Chargers, the Giants, and the Browns.
Who said that?
Ravens wire.
Oh, of course they did.
Yeah.
Of course, the Ravens wire.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess when you look at landing spots, I mean, look, most people think that he would probably end up in Seattle. I'm not so sure about that. Again, I don't even know. I don't even know the issue going on in Seattle because I'm just not there yet. I haven't looked. When I look at a fitment to Detroit, does he fit? Yes, he does. When I was initially kind of balking at the idea, like I think that Tyler Linderbaum is, always has been the best choice. It's just the money. And can the Lions free it up? They don't have to trade for the guy. And at the end of the day, would I rather have Tyler Linderbaum or Maxx Crosby? Well, I know my answer. I want to get everybody else's answer right now. So make sure, if you guys do me a huge favor, continue peppering the comment section. The chat section is great while we're live, but after the fact, if you're listening and then you see the comments roll up or you're watching it later, the comment section is very important. You can ask questions all the way through it, and then I'll usually go back and try to answer every single one. But do me a favor, give me your answer right now. Would Maxx Crosby or Tyler Linderbaum be a better choice in free agency?
Tyler Linderbaum. I'll go with the center. To me, that's a more important piece. You can put someone that is not on the same level as Maxx Crosby on the other side of Hutch and get just as much production as Maxx Crosby got with the Raiders, because they did it with the Lions just did it. He got 11 and a half sacks on the other. I can't think of people's names this morning. On the other side of Aiden Hutchinson, with a player that's 30 years old and came from the Bears practice squad. So if they can do that, they don't need to go out and get Maxx Crosby. Maxx Crosby didn't even have 11.5 sacks this year. I would rather have a center that is going to fortify that line for the next 3 to 5 years.
I'm right there with you, my man. You know, and if you look at the numbers, you know, you're looking at probably a max deal right now, right around 19 million APY. Again, I developed some code here that goes in and it kind of drills down. I do the spot track comparables, measure like the comparable contracts, and that'll be in the profile. You'll see some today when I put them up on DetroitFootballJournal.com. Make sure you're subscribed today. All you have to do is put in your email, and then I'm going to give you a free 6-month subscription for free. Just sign up with your email, and then I'll take care of the rest. I'll do an upgrade later on this evening. I'm sure I've got another 30 or 40 people that are waiting on their upgrade. I'll get it done today. And then share it, man. Share it with as many people as you can. Tell them to get in and get their free 6 months now. Because guess what? You're not going to have to pay for the magazine when it comes out. If I can get it done, you're not going to have to pay for it. It's a big undertaking, and I don't have a whole lot of time, but we'll see. You know, maybe I can get a small one done. If I can get the big one done, then I'll be surprised. When I say magazine, it's digital magazine. So I've looked at all the numbers, and I would say 19 million APY is probably the tippy top right now. Honestly, you might be able to get this guy for around 17. And if the Lions can do that, I'm good.
But you got to remember, you're going to have 3, 4, 5 other teams that are going to be in a bidding war for this guy, and the Ravens might just be in on it as well.
Well, I mean, the Ravens are absolutely going to be in on it. But the question is, are they going to be able to? Are they going to be able to compete? And say, I mean, they just had a shit year, you know, and the Lions did not have a great year for what they expect. But when you look at the type of players that we have, the type of coaches that we have, I'd be willing to bet that maybe Linderbaum would love a fresh start too. And it'd be closer to home. You know, I was just hop, skip, and a jump. A couple states over. So here's another way it gets done, though. If Taylor Decker retires, well, that opens up the money immediately. You know, we asked earlier if Taylor Decker should retire. 79% said yes. Or 78%, I believe, said yes. But if you were to have Taylor Decker retire, then the money's there. Or more importantly, I believe if you release him before or after June 1st, I think you open about $13.5 million this year. And so that almost gets you there. Now, have to be real for a second. Just because you sign a player this year doesn't mean that he's getting paid $19 million this year. More than likely, he's going to get a vet minimum and a signing bonus. You know, or a few $1 million base and a signing bonus. That's what he'll get. It'll be kicked down a little bit with a couple of void years too. So his cap might only be $6 million for the first year, maybe 7. I don't think it'd be more than 10, but it's not going to be 19. So you can absolutely fit this guy in. Next year is when you're going to have to pay for him. The next couple of guys on this list, and then I want to get into audio because we're gonna miss out on it if we don't get it in. Guard Isaac Suomelo, landing spot according to this, the Vegas Raiders. Guard David Edwards going to the Chargers potentially. Guard Elijah Vera Tucker possibly going to the Commanders. And guard Joel Bitonio potentially going to the 49ers right now. So a lot of guards and only a couple centers this year available. Not very many tackles in free agency this year. Next up, I want to get into the audio of roster building and why it's so important and why you should be excited about your Detroit Lions in the direction that they're going. don't know what happened to my screen, though. It's like something's wrong with this. I want out of this. Go back. There we go. All right, be right back. I need to grab a drink, man. My throat is on fire. There you go. Oh my goodness, where is it?
That's why I have a mini fridge right next to my desk.
I got a whole fridge right here, not a mini one. But I don't think I have anything in it right now. I got to go to Costco today.
Middle caught inside the 5. Jameer Gibbs to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. 14 yards on the strike. Goff to Gibbs. You can't cover that man one-on-one. You just can't do it.
Nice job.
Jared takes the snap, back looking, throwing middle. Got Amon-Ra inside the 2, to the 1, to the end zone. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Amon-Ra, St. Brown. Amon-Ra, St. Brown.
Nice job.
Mariota's got it back. Pressure comes. He's hit. Slips out of it. Rolling to his right. Now he's going down. Brian Branch got him. Sack for the Lions. Snap taken by Mariota. Wants to throw it. Gonna get hit. Gonna get sacked.
Yes,
Take it down. Brian Branch got him second time today.
Nice job.
Pressured by Hutchinson. He goes down again.
Whoops. All right, building a Super Bowl roster. Eric, are we doing it right?
I hope so.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, okay, let's preface it this way. Two teams that just made the Super Bowl spent some of the most money in free agency.
They sure did.
Okay. Now, does that mean because they spent the most money in free agency that is why they went to the Super Bowl?
Absolutely not.
Why?
Well, some of it was schedule. The Patriots had one of the easiest schedules, and then when they got to the playoffs, they had one of the easiest run through the playoffs that's ever existed. They played the Denver Broncos, who lost their starting quarterback. Had Bo Nix been in that game, I fully expect the Denver Broncos would have been in the Super Bowl this year. And then on the other side, you have the Seahawks. They had a pretty tough schedule this year, and they had to put together a team that had Geno Smith the previous year as their quarterback, and they had to make a decision. Can we do it all with Geno Smith? And they shipped him off to the Raiders. And what did they do with all that money? They spent it on Sam Darnold, $100 million, like you said earlier. Most of that money went to Sam Darnold. And I think bringing in Sam Darnold was the right move. And he got them 14 wins in the regular season, undefeated in the playoffs and the Super Bowl. That was the right move. But I don't think it was just money and just all these free agents that got them there. I think it's one free agent that got them there.
And who was that?
Sam Darnold.
Okay. Now, for years, decades, the Patriots have done nothing but draft and develop, draft and develop, draft and develop. Sign their own. They go to free agency when they have to and you know, pick up the next wave of underperforming wide receivers to give to Tom Brady to turn into amazing athletes. But the last few seasons, they have not drafted well at all. As a matter of fact, I know I brought this up a couple of times, but I have to say it one more time. There's a collection of fans in Detroit that believe Brad Holmes should be fired. because of like 3 moves, just 3. Trinity Benson in 2021, I believe. Hendon Hooker in 23 and Broderick Martin in 23. Because of those 3 moves, Brad Holmes sucks. Because of those 3 moves, and Marcus Davenport, 4 moves, that Brad Holmes should be fired. The New England Patriots, and I will put this together and I will put it into an article. I mean, it's already mostly done anyway. They don't have like any of their 4th round picks, and they've had a lot of them in the last few seasons on the roster. I think 1 remains. And over the last 3 years, I want to say they've had 7 4th round picks in the last 3 years, something close to that number, and only 1 is on the roster. Compare that to Brad Holmes. It's not even close, right? If you're telling me that means, the Patriots don't have a GM, right? They have the de facto GM or Robert Kraft or Bill Belichick. When he was there, he was also kind of the GM too. He was doing it all. He was building his team and buying his team and coaching his team. But if you're telling me that you wasted all of your 4th round picks and you don't have 1 starter on your team, or maybe only 1, and your hit rate is below 38% on all draft picks, tell me how they just made it to the Super Bowl then. If you must hit on every pick, in every 3rd and 4th round pick, how did they make it to the Super Bowl? What do you think?
I think a lot of times Brad is unfairly criticized by fans.
Oh yeah.
And I know some people think that you and I are just Brad Holmes lackeys.
No.
But listen, Brad Holmes is put together from the ashes a team that 4 out of 5 seasons has had a winning record. First time in my lifetime that's ever happened. So I can't judge him as being a bad GM when 4 out of 5 seasons the Detroit Lions have had a winning record. Now, some fans want more. They don't just want to be winners. They don't want a Mike Tomlin who just makes the playoffs every year or has a winning record for 20 years. They don't care about that. The only thing they care about is winning a Super Bowl. Well, I truly believe that you have to build it. And sometimes you have a hiccup along the way. And that's what the Detroit Lions had the last 2 seasons. They just had some bumps in the road that they couldn't get over. They hit the wrong bump and they blew a tire. You know, we went 15-2, number 1 seed, and we lose to the Commanders in the 1st round. Then last year we hired Johnny Morton. It doesn't work out. We go 9-8. But you know what? Brad Holmes has put together more wins in 4 years than any other GM in my lifetime. So until he does not do that anymore, I don't think Brad Holmes is the problem whatsoever. And I do think that if he can have 1 more home run draft and free agency like he did when he got Sam Laporta, when he got Jahmyr Gibbs, and he got Brian Branch and Jack Campbell all in 1 draft. If he can have a draft that even gets 2 top tier players like that, and we can hit it out of the park and get 1 or 2 home run hits in free agency, I think we're on our way to a Super Bowl. We're not that far off. Plus you add in the 4th place schedule. There's 3 games that we get to play against teams that ended up in 4th place in their division last year. So you add 3 games to what we did last year, that's 12 wins. I expect the floor this year to be 12 wins for Brad Holmes and the Detroit Lions. And that's the floor.
Okay. I pulled up part of my article. I'm going to be brief, and then we're going to go right into the audio. First, we got a shout out to Super Chat by the Purple Man Puma, the Purple Puma 8804. Appreciate you, buddy. Appreciate you dropping in. $5 Super Chat. Says Linderbaum is more of a necessity. Crosby is more of a luxury. Personally, I would love to get Eric McCoy or Kyle Pitts. Hey, I like Kyle Pitts. But good statement there. Appreciate you, man. Let's
Who's
get
Eric McCoy.
Eric McCoy is he's another center, right? I'm pretty sure.
I'll look him up.
Lesser known, because I don't know much about him. Let's get you lined up with the Monroe this morning.
Amon-Ra flips it out to Gibbs. He's to the house, baby. Touchdown, Detroit Lions. Oh, that is beautiful.
There he is. Plays for the Saints.
He's a center,
28
right?
28 years old. Yep. Let's see what he's done here. Man, ESPN is not showing me any stats anymore. They just show the player and that's it.
Well, you just type in the player's name and then stats next to it, and it usually pulls up.
I did, and ESPN came up, and it does not show.
Well, the center's not going to have much for stats. I mean, that's where you got to go look at, win block, pass block rates and win bar, win.
Here,
I can't talk today. You got to go to PFF.
That's what I'm doing right now.
Or next gen stats, or other things like that. But while you're doing that, I want to make this quick comparison here, real quick, to Brad Holmes. I've said some of this stuff before, but I really want to drive it home when we get into this audio here from Bill Polian about building your Super Bowl roster. What are the Seattle Seahawks doing well? Why is it working? And how does that translate to the Detroit Lions? Brad Holmes, there's a continental divide here by what Brad Holmes is doing and what the Patriots have done and what the Minnesota Vikings have done. Like, the Minnesota Vikings only have 4 starters out of all the drafts. That's it. Four starters out of all the drafts that Kwesi has been there. 4. And when you compare what the Patriots have done, they haven't employed like a formal GM since 1990, I think. Like I said, they operated through the de facto leads like Bill Belichick and Elliott Wolf. And to really understand why Brad Holmes' success is not the norm at all, I think we have to look at New England's systemic failures between 2021 and 2024. Their draft retention rate is a staggering 36.8%. The league average is 55%. Brad Holmes is over 73%. That's insane numbers that he's retaining pretty much 3 out of 4 players, when the league is retaining 5 out of 10. So while New England was getting ready for the Super Bowl, their path really wasn't paved because of anything else other than an historic amount of attrition. And it's a stark contrast between, stacking like Brad Holmes does. He's stacking or replacing. Brad is stacking talent year after year after year. But the question becomes, are you acquiring talent? Are you just a hoarder of talent? Or are you a builder of a roster? I think there's a difference. And that is going to be the question that I have for Brad Holmes this year. Are you an elite builder? And I'm taking some of this from Bill Polian. It's such a great way to think about it. Are you just, I want all the Steelies for marbles, right? Nope. I want all the red Legos. Are you just hoarding the talent or the best of the best? Or are you building it? Are you turning it into something that can really compete? I'll let you guys think about that. But in 2021, or since 2021, the Patriots have made 49 draft picks. Only 29 of them remain. 11 were cut outright. And this isn't really about trading, any assets. They didn't get anything back. These players were evaluated, drafted, and discarded. In 2021, which was supposed to be the Patriots' future, completely evaporated. Only Christian Barmore and Ramondre Stevenson remain. Mac Jones was traded after just 3 seasons in 2024. 2022 was a complete disaster. Out of the 10 draft picks, only Marcus Jones remained. Just 10% retention rate for an entire class that is not even 3 years old. 2023, which would become the Great Reset, already 42% of that class is now departed, including high-profile picks like Keon White and their kicker, Chad Ryland. Now, 2024 and 2025, you're starting to rebuild. Those classes are so young to see who stays and who goes. They're too young. However, unlike previous years, the entire draft class, one led by Drake May in 2024, and then Christian Gonzalez, I think we already know who those 2 players are. They're going to be around a long time. They're the only ones that remain on the roster that really signify that the pivot forward for the franchise was going to have to be through free agency. 2025 was the financial bailout. Why? When you get rid of all those players that were former draft picks, you open up a ton of money. A ton of money. Because those contracts were cheap. But when there's so many of them that are gone, you're working with a big capital gain, in 2025. So they were forced to replace a mountain of discarded talent in 2025 when they went on a record-breaking spending spree, coughing up $209 million in just guaranteed money. That's not the overall contracts. They had like over $500,000 or $500 million that was spent, but $209 million was under the guarantee. So that should be a shocking number to you. That Brad Holmes is operating at one of the league's best retention rates of 73%. And a team like the Patriots, now why am I making the analogy here, the comparison here? Because for people that say Brad Holmes missed on this and this and this, and there's no way we're going to make it to a Super Bowl because he doesn't draft well, 1, that's just idiocy. And 2, the Patriots just made it to the Super Bowl. And they drafted like shit. Where Brad is drafted really good, what's the difference now? If Brad wants to go all in on free agency this year, and if that's truly the answer, well, he can do that. He can renegotiate some contracts. Now he has the players that he's drafted that are really good, and now you can go all in and bring in a few key pieces. But it's not one piece. It's multiple pieces that we still need. No team is ever one piece away. And so I would say that if Brad is going to be successful in free agency this year, and if free agency is truly the answer, he's going to have to bring in 3 or 4 key pieces. And they're not going to be cheap. They're going to average probably 10 to 15 million per player, with your most expensive probably Tyler Linderbaum, if that's the direction they go. So that's it. Did you find anything you wanted to share on the other dude?
Sure. So I'm not so hot on this Eric McCoy. He's been in the league for 7 seasons. He's given up a total of 7 sacks. But his injury history is insane. In 2025, he suffered a season-ending torn biceps elbow injury in Week 7 against the Bears, requiring surgery. In 2024, he had a groin and an elbow, limiting him to 7 games. And then in 2022, he missed 4 games due to a calf injury. In 2021, he missed 4 games following a Week 1 calf strain. The guy is a walking ER report.
Wait a minute. It sounds like Davenport.
Yes.
Right? That sounds like a perfect Brad player.
Yeah, he does sound perfect. Now, this past season, he only played in 449 snaps, had 3 penalties, 0 sacks. The most snaps he's played is like 1,100 in 2 seasons. But this past season, his overall grade was a 67.9. His run blocking was 62.3, and his pass blocking was 84.1. So, I mean, his grades are.
I bet you that's real close to Graham Glasgow type numbers. Maybe not real close. It could even be a little bit better. But without watching film, like really knowing, studying the guy, I have no idea. But let's get into it, man. Bill Polian, here we go.
Show talking about the roster construction, that of the Super Bowl champion Seattle Seahawks. Their general manager, John Schneider, astute drafting and development of players combined with intricate trades and the signing of unrestricted free agents. One such player who came on last year during the offseason scramble for free agent talent was DeMarcus Lawrence. I remember when he left Dallas, people asked, well, why did you leave? He was like, I want to win. It drew the ire of some of the Cowboy fans. And, congratulations to him. He took his leadership over to Seattle. This was a player that was really determined and focused. And it was a highly, I think, targeted signing by both John Schneider and their head coach, Mike McDonald. They loved everything about DeMarcus Lawrence, his leadership, his maturity, and the fact that he's a productive player. All of those things meshed. And he came over to the team. Sam Darnold, they added in free agency last year. When most people were still scratching their chin after the postseason last year, Seattle seemed to be all in on the veteran quarterback, still with some ghost in the closet. No pun intended. And then to make a shrewd move at the trade deadline for Rashid Shaheed, a player who they knew well after the offensive coordinator, Clint Kubiak, had spent time with him in New Orleans last year. This was really all the pieces of the puzzle came together for this football team this year. And I really thought in the season finale, when they won the game to get home field advantage and they beat the Rams and they beat the 49ers, I thought right then and there, remember they go for a 2-point conversion. They had to score late in the game. I'm thinking this is your Super Bowl team. This team's going to the Super Bowl. I said if the road to the Super Bowl has to go through Seattle, they have the league's #1 ranked scoring defense. Right then and there, I thought they had punched their ticket. I knew they would at least get there. I felt that strong about them because every year when they had the league's #1 ranked defense and they had home field advantage, they went to the Super Bowl, and this year was no different. Well, your thoughts on how this team is constructed and how it's put together?
Well, just look at the free agent acquisitions. Free agent acquisitions are big money, right? So you got to be careful about them. You got to be careful about where they are in their careers, how much dead money you're going to be looking at down the road, things of that nature. They made 2 acquisitions this year that were incredible. Sam Darnold, we talked about, and DeMarcus Lawrence. DeMarcus Lawrence comes in and adds 6 sacks to a group that included Nuoso with 7, Murphy with 7, Leonard Williams with 7, and Drake Thomas with 3.5. That's big-time production. He was the missing link. He was the piece that was missing. Sam Darnold, of course.
Okay, pausing it here. And I think you already know why. Eric, we keep hearing that the Detroit Lions need Maxx Crosby, that they need Trey Hendrickson, that they need Myles Garrett, and everybody else that costs $50 million or $40 million or $30 million. And what are you going to get in return? Well, you're going to get anywhere from 10 to potentially 23 sacks. We know the outlier is 23, more like 14 on average for Myles Garrett. So 10 to 14 sacks is what you're going to get from any of those players that I just named, or even Micah Parsons. But you're going to give up 2 to 3 first-round picks or 2 first and a second in a trade, and or $30 to $50 million a year. They brought in DeMarcus Lawrence, He had 6 sacks. It cost them, are you sitting down? $3 million signing bonus. 3 years, over $32.5 million contract. So you're talking just under $11.5 million per year. $18 million in total guarantees. That is about the same kind of money that we just paid Derek Barnes. So if there was a move that should have been made, probably should have been a guy like Lawrence. Right? But does he fit the scheme? Probably not. Right? Maybe he's more the 3-4 guy. But there's a key here. There's a key to what Polian just said. And it's what I've been saying for years and trying to get people to understand. It's not about having 2 elite guys, quasi elite guys, or quasi and 1 elite. Well, you know what? I'm just bullshitting. 2 elite guys on the ends. Because what happens is when one of them can't play, when one of them gets injured, then that entire idea just failed. And so what? If one of them gets free and that one person now is going to get those 14 sacks, 13, 15 sacks a year, and the other one's getting double teamed, and he's not able to beat double teams, Aiden Hutchinson. He's not able to beat triple teams, Aiden Hutchinson. And he struggles against one-on-ones, Aiden Hutchinson. Well, then it doesn't matter. Because if you double Aiden, or you don't, here's what's going to happen. If you go and double Dexter Lawrence, or Myles Garrett, well, he's still going to get free for a few. But Aiden is still capped, right? The philosophy doesn't change. I don't think people realize this. What teams are doing, that they're already doing today to the Lions defense, will not change. Even if you bring in a Myles Garrett or anybody, they're still double teaming that guy. El-Kadim Muhammad was double teamed and triple teamed more than Aiden Hutchinson throughout 90% of the season. And then at the tail end of the season, Aiden ended up beating him out by like 1% or 1.5% more double teams. So like 3 double teams on the whole year. That's not enough to say that, well, AQM has doubled that much less. But how does that translate? Well, if they're still double teaming and triple teaming the guys equally, you're still probably going to get the equal amount of sacks. Right? It's not going to change the dynamic to what people really believe that it's going to change. It's just not. You still need power players and force multipliers at other positions. And this defense is more about the linebackers staying clean than anything else now. It's not so much about the defensive ends. Our defensive ends, they need to be great against the run. And if they're great against the run, the sacks will come. If you have a good secondary, the sacks will come. But it's not all about sacks. It's about TFLs, right? It's about keeping guys clean so that they can affect the pocket, so they can push the quarterback. The most important thing that he just said was this. Dexter Lawrence, 6 sacks. Nwaso, 7 sacks. Murphy, 7 sacks. Williams, 7 sacks. Thomas, 3.5 sacks. When you combine all that up, you got 21, 27, 30.5. 30.5 sacks out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 guys. So that means they're averaging about 6.1 sacks per season per player. Now, I've been saying this for a long time, Eric, you know this, that to me, it's about having those tier 2 guys. It's about having a tier 2 contract, a guy that you're not paying a boatload of money to, that is able to give you 6, 7, or 8 sacks. That's the number. And I want one here, and I want a backup over here, and I want another backup over there, and I want a starter right here in the middle with Jack Campbell. That's how I see it. I want 5 or 6 guys that can go in and give me production, not 2. And I want 5 or 6 guys because if this guy gets injured, then the guy behind him can step up. And you haven't lost a step. Now you just got to backfill and hope that your third backup is as good or can at least produce a little bit. Or maybe this second backup now, the rotational player, has to play more snaps now. But then you force multiply with your DBs and the rest of your linebackers and your safeties. If you look at what Seattle did very well, they did not just stay front seven dominant. No, they were bringing leverage attacks with DBs and safeties. That's what we need to see more of. If Calvin Shepard wants to take this defense to the next level, he needs to get away from just sending the front seven. He has to get more dynamic with 3 safeties and 3 DBs on the field. You need speed. And that is what the Seattle Seahawks have. They have speed, and they have diversity, and they have 5 or 6 guys winning, not 2. Any comment before I start playing the rest?
I have to say, I do believe in having your starters, but having better depth players and role players is what got Seattle to the Super Bowl, because you have to work as a unit. I would rather have a better unit overall than have one superstar and a bunch of bit players that are no good.
So I didn't quite understand what you said there. You said, I believe in having the starters, but the
fact I would rather have, players like Roy Lopez as a backup versus having
just some cheap no-name free agent guy that doesn't do much.
Yeah, because I couldn't afford it, because the other guy I have, let's say Williams, is super expensive, right? I don't want to pay all this money to one guy, Maxx Crosby, and then be left with a bunch of practice squad guys. I'm tired of the practice squad guys. Let's get our depth where we don't need a bunch of practice squad guys throughout the year.
Well, we're going to need practice squad guys no matter what. I mean, your depth. The reason why Dan Campbell talks about all 69 is because of injuries.
I mean, taking players from other teams. I don't want to be having to steal off of someone else's practice squad just so we can put.
Yeah, so that has nothing to do with building a roster. That is health. That's injury. That's not building a roster. That's if the Lions have injuries like they did the last 2 seasons, we're not going anywhere this year either. We're not. You can't build a roster that deep. And if you do, you got really lucky. If you have 69 guys that can start, you're really lucky. Like that's never happened.
Yeah.
But the reason why we're taking guys from other teams is because we were injured. The point is, the emphasis for me, I would rather have, to put a percentage on it, you have 22 starters. And if I look at the starters, I would say that I want probably a 50-50 rule. I want 50 that are in the elite category for their position, which would be 11 players. And then I want 11 that are in tier 2. And that doesn't include the 4th or the 5th, wide receiver, right? And we'll come back to this, but that's the point that I'm trying to make, is I'd rather have tier 2 guys as not just starters, but backups. Well, I think to your point, yeah, we don't want 3rd and 4th string type guys as our backups. We've never really had that, but we need to level up our depth. Our rotation needs to start getting closer to the level of your starters. And that is what Seattle did. If you didn't hear in the beginning, they made 3 moves. Sam Darnold, DeMarcus Lawrence, and Rashid Shaheed at the trade deadline. Now, there's a couple more players, but that's it. I mean, that was the majority of the moves that they made. But let's keep listening to Polian, because he's going to break it down It makes a whole lot more sense.
Of course, was the piece that was missing under center. And Rashid Shaheed was the piece that was missing as a slot receiver and as a return man. So John went and spent money on veteran players who fit perfectly into the system. That's the way you should use free agency. Not going for names, not trying to win free agency, not trying to win the offseason. That's all nonsense. Use what money you have to fill needs with people who absolutely fit your system. And
if you guys don't know, Bill Polian is a former NFL executive GM. What did he just say? You don't shop in free agency for names. It's not about big splash. It's not about winning headlines, right? It's not about winning free agency. It's the number one word, fit. Finding the right guys that fit your team. That's it. That's the goal of free agency.
And those three signings made the difference. Really, when it's all said and done, those are the three that made the difference.
Another shrewd move, and I thought this would happen because I remember the way things were trending during the second half of last season. Remember, John Schneider was the one who drafted receivers like Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf. And so often, you become in love with your own creation. These are the players you drafted. They are on their second contract, deep into their second contracts, and you're trying to figure out what comes next. And Jackson Smith and Jigba made it easy for him because you watch him play and you're like, well, he's the future. I mean, it was clear he was the future. But they said goodbye to Tyler Lockett and they traded DK Metcalf and got, more draft assets, right? That did factor in some of the players that they use in 2025. You had some really good players that they selected in last year's draft. But they did say goodbye to DK Metcalf, which I'm sure wasn't easy, and maybe, drew a scratch of the chin by many of their fans. But to be able to move on and unleash Jackson Smith and Jigba after what they saw last year, that was critical. I mean, that was a very strategic plan and turned out to be a stroke of genius because they got better. It was addition by subtraction. Let's face it.
Well, not only that, but, there's an old adage. I think it's attributed to Branch Rickey, the great baseball man. Better to trade a player a year too early than a year too late. And for a general manager in the NFL who's had success with players, and especially those that came up through your system where you draft them and develop them and they become stars. I mean, you just become attached to them.
That's right.
They're people who go out and bleed for you every Sunday.
There's some loyalty there, isn't it?
Big time. And emotional loyalty. And it's hard. It's hard to say goodbye. It really is. And John has the gumption to go ahead and say, look, these guys, Lockett and Metcalf are coming to the end now. And it's time to move on. And that's hard to do. I can tell you from personal experience, it's very, very hard to do.
Great points, Bill. There's a human quotient to what we do. It's not all spreadsheets. It's not all data analytics. There is some human emotion that comes into this because the product is people. The product are players. There are people, and you mentioned they blood, sweat, and tears. They bled for you. Playing hurt, for their teammates and for the town and for the ownership and their GM and their coaches. You and I both know there are players who do that every single Sunday, and they make a way, and those relationships are made even stronger when they end up coming through with some Herculean performance. I've seen it where you're like, there's no way they're supposed to be playing this well given what they're dealing with injury-wise. And, that's all heart, Bill. That's what players say. That's some love of the game type stuff right there.
And those guys are role models for everybody else. They
Yes.
are difference makers on the field, but they're force multipliers in the locker room and in the building. Jimmy Irsay, a great owner. I went to him about not Peyton Manning, but another player who was equally good, and said to him, "Look, this guy's coming to an end here. He's got some injuries, and he's not going to be the same player. And I love him, and you love him, but we ought to think about moving on." And he just looked me right in the eye and said, "No."
He said, "Hey, I'm not doing it.
I'm not doing it. We are not doing that." So we kept him for one. We kept him for one more year. He just couldn't bring himself to do it because that guy had been such an integral part of our team. And as the GM, it's my responsibility to sit down and say, "Here's where I think this player is in his career. Here's where I think this player is in his career." But he never even hesitated. He just said no. I said, "Okay." Yes, sir.
Those are players that are leaders in your locker room. Those are players, you talked about them as force multipliers. I think the ownership group that recognize the other contributions that those really unique players bring to the table, other than just the production or the stat line next to their name, that there's other qualities that they bring to the table. And they become such signature pieces inside the building. It matters to other people within the building, and they help set the course and set that rudder for the team, which way it's going to go. And when times get dark and you hit hard times, those are the players that help you find your North Star, because they're just wired right. Their effort and energy, and they're very intentional in terms of what they do on a day-to-day basis. And it helps the younger players know that this is how we handle it when we hit a tough spot in the road, and no one deviates. I always say there's no team that wins a Super Bowl, Bill, that did not hit an iceberg at least somewhere along the way. Like you don't get to get there without some adversity. You remember that game against the Rams where Sam Darnold was one pick after another pick after another pick, and everyone's ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater. And I think it was Ernest Jones was like, "He's our quarterback. Nope, he's fine. Don't even talk about Sam. He wouldn't even let you mention him." And Ernest Jones, the guy on the defensive side of the ball, in that press conference, and it showed you that was a team that was tethered and glued and stuck together. They were connected in the right way. I think that was a moment of adversity, true adversity for that football team. But they didn't unravel. They didn't come apart. They didn't point fingers. In fact, they grew closer together as a result.
Yeah, there's absolutely. That's the truest statement there ever was. Nobody makes the Super Bowl without going through hitting an iceberg somewhere along the line. And you have to overcome it. And the people, those special people, not players. Everybody's a player, and great players are great players. But special people, aside from their playing ability, are the ones who help you find the North Star, who build trust in the locker room, who show you how to. We had a guy in Buffalo named Ray Bentley. I'll bet you there are a lot of Buffalo fans that don't even remember him.
I remember Ray. He was a dude. Dude.
Undersized linebacker, smart as could be. Mm-hmm. He played a whole season with a separated shoulder that they had to pin his arm to his side with tape.
Yeah.
He could only tackle with one arm. And God knows what pain he went through. Never missed a snap. He's out there each and every week, practicing each and every week. And when it came time to let him go, I mean, the two of us sat in the office and cried. I mean, it was terrible. It broke my heart, because here's a guy that he's why young players learn how to win. He teaches them by example. This is what a pro is. This is a guy who really wants to win. This is somebody that you should emulate. And those guys are few and far between. The Bills have a guy like that now, a linebacker named Milano.
That's right.
Those guys are, especially on defense. I mean, those guys are so tough that they force everybody else to play. People say you don't play injured, but you play hurt, right?
That's right.
By mid-season, everybody's got something wrong with them.
That's right.
But those tough guys are the leading lights. They're the ones that everybody else follows, and they say, well, if he's out there with one arm, I can go out there with a little bit of a sore hammy. That's what happens in the locker room with people like that. So they're worth their weight in gold, and boy, are they hard to let go.
Well, this Seattle roster, I mean, they were full of some guys. I think one of the gutsy performances that we saw in the Super Bowl was that of Kenneth Walker III, ends up with with the game's most valuable player award as a result of his 135 yards rushing and 27 carries. Many of us wondered if he could carry the load, usually shouldered by two running backs. Kenneth Walker and, of course, his running mate, Zach Charbonnet, who was out for the game. They put it all, in terms of the burden of carrying the run game, put it all on Kenneth Walker III, and boy, did he come through. And that's why he was riding around Disneyland yesterday with his quarterback, Sam Darnold. He got the trip to Disneyland as the game's MVP and shared it with his quarterback. I thought it was phenomenal. I was very happy for the young running back out of Michigan State. Now set to hit the free agent market as a former second-round pick. Let's see if they can get a deal done before that day comes. I would suspect there's going to be a market for one Kenneth Walker III. We're taking a break. We get to come back with more, have a conversation about Drake May.
All right. So that was Bill Polian, obviously Solomon Wilcots discussing roster building. And the reason why I wanted to share this with you, I happened to listen to this last night as I'm out driving on my way home, and I'm like, man, this is perfect because, there's some people that scream pretty loud and often about Brad Holmes not doing the right thing and that Brad Holmes is making all these mistakes. And what's funny is, and I'm not saying that you need to be, some ultra professional, that you need to be a CEO or own your own business to understand the dynamics of football. But I will say it helps. If you are in a high level position, you understand roster building maybe a little bit deeper than others because you're building a roster of employees, right? And the dynamic of a salary cap and how much you can pay people and the output that you get from those employees and how important some of those veterans that you have in the office or wherever on the road, how important they are to your team. It's the same level of thinking for an NFL roster. And it's not easy. It's not easy. And I think one of the most important things that they said in here too was letting players go. I've said it multiple times this year to everyone because I share some pretty wild trade ideas, or some things that I would do if I happen to be in the GM chair for a day. And not everyone would like me. Matter of fact, a lot of you would probably hate me. And that's because I don't worry about the relationship side of it. I worry about the team. I would worry about the business. I would worry about making the right move to make the franchise better. And that's a hard position to be in. Not everybody can be there. Some people are too attached, and we see that often with fans. I myself as a fan, we get attached to players. We get attached to say, look, man, of course I don't want to see this guy go anywhere. Love watching him on Sundays. Love cheering for him. Couldn't imagine seeing him in another uniform. But that's why these GMs have such a hard job. And that is why it's not for everyone. Because what they have to navigate from salary cap to emotions, emotional intelligence, to locker room behaviors, practice habits, eating habits, everything. They have to manage everything or be part of everything. The injuries, the rehab, having to be a glorified adult babysitter at times. the stories that you hear about things that go on in an NFL franchise are just crazy, funny and horrific. Like, matter of fact, like right now, when the season is over, this is when the GM is the most terrified. When the season is over, they're hoping their phone doesn't ring. Because between now and like the draft or just after the draft, and some of these players get these big new contracts, that is when things kind of hit the wall. If you haven't noticed, more players get in trouble between the mid-February and May. I don't know what it is. They've got more free time. They get in trouble. So being a GM is tough, man. It's a tough job. I respect the hell out of what Brad Holmes does. But hearing these things from somebody else that has no allegiance to the Lions, and they're telling you that what the Seattle Seahawks have just done is the blueprint. It's why they were successful. Right? They've drafted and developed very well. I didn't hear the stat that I was looking for, but there was all but 2 drafted players on offense, all but 2 drafted players on defense on the Super Bowl winning Seattle Seahawks team. Only 4 players through free agency or trade deadline were brought in. One was the quarterback, one was DeMarcus Lawrence, one was Rashid Shaheed, which, by the way, Rashid Shaheed was a $2.1 million contract. We know Sam Darnold got a $100 million contract. DeMarcus Lawrence got a $32 million contract. And forgive me because I'm not remembering the 4th player. But the point is, it was Josh Jones. That's right. Josh Jones. Offensive lineman. The point is, Brad's doing it right. Now, I said I was going to come back to what I would think would make up a good mix of tier level, right? And so I was just doing some math, looking at the roster, and so I started writing down some names. Who are the tier 1s currently on the Lions roster? Just from a starting 11, okay? On offense, Penei Sewell, Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jameson Williams, Gibbs, Monty. So that's 6. Now, Monty's not going to be on the field at the same time Gibbs is, at least not very often. So that's really 5 on the field at once. And then you have Tate Ratledge, who I believe is going to be in that tier 1 level this year. So that's 7 overall, 6 of which are on the field at one time. And then if you kind of go down the line a little bit, yeah, Taylor Decker used to be in that tier 1 level. And I would say that he probably still is if he's healthy. Right? If he's healthy, he should still be in that tier 1, teetering tier 2. But I would rather have a Taylor Decker than, probably 20 other left tackles in the league. So let's go with the number 7 on offense. And then on the defensive side of the ball, you got Aiden, Aleem McNeil, Brian Branch, Jack, Kirby, and DJ Reed. We don't know if Kirby's healthy or is going to be healthy. The point is, I'm using these numbers and these names as to what Brad assembled to have high-level football players. Now, it took Kirby 3 years to be elite. It took Branch year 1. It took Aleem McNeil 3 seasons. It took Aiden still developing, but you could put him there. But it took him a couple of seasons to get more consistent, right? He was not elite out of the box. DJ Reed, I have to put him in tier 1 because of his body of work. Now, his body of work last year in Detroit was not great, and I think a lot of that was mirrored by injury. But if you look at what Brad has put on the field, you got Aiden, Aleem, Branch, Jack, Kirby, and DJ Reed. At least 6, which you could consider tier 1 players. If you really wanted to stretch it, you could say, okay, Terry and Arnold entering year 3, he could be elite this year, or at least tier 1. Could be. And he's a first-round pick, so he should be. Right? What if he becomes tier 1 this year? So that's 7 players. I'm not sold on Derek Barnes. I think he's more tier 2. I think he's a really good tier 2. Alex Anzalone, I mean, he's one of the better linebackers in the league, but I don't think he's tier 1. I think he's tier 2. I think a couple of years ago you would say he's tier 1. I think he can still play, play the game at a very high level, if that makes sense. But let's just go with the number of 7 there as well. So that's 14. That's 14 players that Brad has assembled, which gives you about a 64% tier 1 level on your starting 11. I'm not talking punter, I'm not talking kicker, and I'm not talking snapper, right? Appreciate you, DePurple. I'll get to that in just a moment. If that's the model, and everyone else is a tier 2 player working to be tier 1, or those are the players that you're trying to create or turn into tier 1, whether it's through drafting or developing, man, this Lions roster is fantastic. I don't know if you can go to many other rosters and say that you have 64% of your starting roster that are in tier 1. And quite honestly, you can stretch this number. Like I said, you could add Taylor Decker to this list. If you had Frank Ragnow on this list, now you're talking 9 players on your starting 11. With Kevin Zeitler was on this list, you're talking 10 players of your starting 11 that are elite. 10 tier 1 players on the field all at once on one side of the ball, and you wonder why our offense was so good. So what do the tier 2 players bring to the table? Well, the tier 2 players to me are guys like AJ Epinesa. AJ Epinesa, as a defensive end, yeah, he's not that big household name, right? He's not someone that you look at and say, oh, I'd rather have you over, a Maxx Crosby or something. But I would. And I would, because I don't want to see the Lions have to, cash strap themselves to bring in some players, to try to win the leverage game. When you do that, you're erasing your future. It's that simple. You could forget about it. So it's all about retention, number 1, drafting correctly, number 2, and being able to retain those players that you drafted and develop those players that you drafted. But now you have to start filling in with tier 2 players, not more tier 1s that are the elite players in free agency that you're going to pay a lot of money for. That's not what you do. That's not how you're going to win. Because if that was the case, then the Packers would have won this year had Parsons stayed healthy. Well, that didn't happen. And the Patriots that spent the most money in free agency, well, that would have been the team that won because they spent the most money in free agency. If that's someone's argument that you have to spend that kind of money to go out and win, I think it's a bad argument. So I guess I'm more in line with exactly what Brad's doing because the proof concept is there, and the Seattle Seahawks just won the Super Bowl by doing exactly that. They just won the Super Bowl with Sam Darnold, and a lot of people, wrote him off and thought that there was no chance in hell that this guy should ever start again, let alone win a Super Bowl. I've been backing him this whole time. Why? Because I saw his ability. I watched his film. I look at what he can do, and I looked at the rosters that he was on before. And my God, you put him in front of a decent O-line with some threats downfield, and that dude could ball. He didn't have that opportunity before. And now he's had it 2 seasons in a row, and he just won a Super Bowl. You give that same style of opportunity to Jared Goff, he's going to win a Super Bowl. And you know what? Jared had us there in 23. Had we had a defense, we could have gone the distance. And that defense was not bringing in one player in at the trade deadline that nobody was willing to sell or trade. It was building it through the draft and bringing guys in free agency, not the trade deadline. The trade deadline is an emergency parachute. That's what that is. That is not how you make your team better. That is how you supplement your team when things go very wrong. That's why there's not a lot of trade deadline trades every year. I think last year might have been the most post-draft trades in a long time. I think it might have been. But trade deadline every year, I mean, if there's more than 5 moves, that's kind of a lot. So it's not normal. It's not how teams expect to build their roster. Free agency is usually left for the teams that are really trying to make a Super Bowl. And Josh Jackson, to your point about the cap in here not being real, that's not very accurate. The cap really is a fugazi, yes. And can teams go over? Yes. There is no fines to be paid. You have to have the cap under the cap before the new league year. So you can go over the cap, but you have to get under the cap. There's no fine to be paid during the season. You can spend more, but if you don't have that cap under, then you're going to get the fines after the new league year. And it's more than just fines. It's way more than just fines. All right, let me get to this. The Purple Man or the Purple Puma. $10 super chat. Appreciate you again, man. Thank you. This is great points. That's why I see that's what I see in Eric McCoy. He's a Dan Campbell type of guy that would fit in the Lions system like a missing piece. He's a big guard dog that just doesn't stop. Hurt or not, watch his film. I'll dig into his film. I think his injury history was quite lengthy from what Eric was saying. But I'll look at him. Maybe he's a cheaper option, but I think where the Lions are today, is Linderbaum affordable? Yes, he is. Every player is really affordable if you want to make it happen. What's not affordable is draft picks. Like, that's what's not affordable. Bringing someone in free agency, let's put it this way. What did we just spend on DJ Reed? Wasn't it like $48 million? 3 years, $48 million. He has a $17.9 million cap hit this year. Last year it was 4.8. And then next year it's 8.1. So this is an all-in play for DJ Reed this year. Next year is the out year for DJ Reed. The Lions are not walking away from DJ Reed this year unless they trade him. So they spend an APY $16 million. So yeah, Linderbaum at $19 million a year is affordable. Would Brad Holmes do it? Absolutely. That kind of money he's already spent. There's not much difference between 16 and 19 million. There's a huge difference between 3, 4, 5, and 6 million and 10 and 12 and then 16 to 20. There's big differences at all 3 levels. But $3, $4, $5 million is not cheap money either. That's a lot of money, and you can only have so many guys that cost that much too. Raw Beast, $5 Canadian says One Pride, Fear to Roar, BTA. We have the studs. There we go. Appreciate it. I don't think you can ever buy a Super Bowl, man. You don't buy a Super Bowl through free agency. I think we've just gone over that. You'd be the lone wolf, in that argument by yourself. And I think the Seattle Seahawks just proved it too, did they not? And every year, almost every year, the team that spends the most money in free agency doesn't win the Super Bowl. But yeah, could you essentially go over if that's what you're saying? Could you go over? Yeah, you can. But that's not a model for success either. Go look at all the teams that are consistently in cap purgatory. They're not winning. They're not winning. You know, go look at the teams that are in cap purgatory year to year to year. Tell me how many Super Bowls they've won. This year, let's see. The Chiefs, they have the most amount of money over the cap at $62 million, and that's a culmination of a lot of contracts over many years, not just one. The Vikings, $45 million in the hole. $45 million. How many Super Bowls have they won? The Cowboys, $36 million in the hole. How many Super Bowls have they won recently? How about the Dolphins? $24 million in the hole. They haven't won squat. The Jaguars, $13.9 million in the hole. They haven't won squat. The Lions, this is our first year starting off the year in Brad Holmes' tenure where we are upside down $13.3 million to start the year. The difference is we have some massive contracts out there. And this, again, is 5 years worth of building where you are now finally just over. But we are really not over because the Lions saved $20 million last year. So they're really not over. They're plus territory about 5, 6, 7 million, whatever the number ends up being. So Lions really aren't over. We're just not operating out front, you know, where we usually are. So where I would put the Lions is they're just underneath the Panthers when they do their rollover. Base salary cap is now 303.5 is what it's going to be going up to in 2026. That is the expected number, 303.5. It's a big jump. So you look at the teams like the Titans. They're operating with $105 million. The Raiders, $91 million. The Chargers, $84 million. The Jets, $84 million. The Commanders, $75 million. The Seahawks, $73 million in open cap space after just winning a Super Bowl. I hope that people realize you don't have to spend all the money in the world to win. They would not have that kind of money had they not drafted well. I mean, there's your proof. There's your proof. Right there. Anyway, I'm talked out. I hope you guys learned something today. And if you did, make sure you guys leave a comment below. Don't forget to sign up for DetroitFootballJournal.com. I'll get everybody updated tonight by probably 7 p.m. And then you'll be upgraded for the next 6 months. Anyway, the next 6 months. And I'm going to start working on some videos and some other things. And hopefully we'll have multiple free agency profiles dropping today. So enjoy the rest of your day. Have a great weekend. Go on Pride, go Detroit Lions. We'll see you back here on Monday, but I'll see you guys throughout the weekend dropping some videos, okay? Take care. Bye-bye.
Pressured by Hutchinson.